Still no. Oh, yes, we got it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about the delay in getting started here. We are ready to go, and we'll start off with roll call.
All right. Tammy Afonso. We're so sorry. We're just going with here tonight. That works. Present here. I see you, so I think we're good.
Present.
Thank you. Janelle Black.
Here.
Thank you. Allison McLeod Budlong.
Present.
Allegra Ann Bushman.
Present.
Andrea Correa.
Present.
Adrian Juarez Cruz. I heard him. I think we're good. He's here. Madonna Feather Cruz is not here. Aaron Geary.
Here.
Thank you. Ross Haas.
Present.
Kathy Hayes. No. I heard you. Herman Hernandez. Ana Vallejo.
Present.
Catherine Howell.
Here.
Andrea Loveday Brown.
Here.
Yvette Miner. I vote for project. Just. Thank you. Melissa Stewart. Carrie Taylor. Not here. Nadia Berenice Villa.
Here.
Berenice, is that incorrectly? Janine Wilson. And Ben Wolf.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So the next thing for the committee, we're just, you had the minutes from the previous meetings that were sent out ahead of time. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those and go through them. Any comments or questions, clarifications from the committee on the meeting minutes? Okay, if not, we're going to move on to the next item, which is a review of the prior meeting.
Perfect. So what we really wanted to, you guys did a lot of work on our last week, was it last week already? 17th. And so we really wanted to, we know sometimes it takes a minute to absorb and think some of those things through. And so we wanted to give you the opportunity before we started with the prioritization after public comment to see if there were any clarifying questions, if there was anything that you wanted to make sure that you understood before we move on to that next section. Just as a quick recap, you guys decided on the ranking for the middle schools. For the elementary schools, you were able to select the top tier of the elementary schools. And then on the high school side, you actually looked at you selected the 3 tiers of schools and not ranking in each of those individual tiers. And so once we go through public comments, that's what we'll pick up is on those high schools and the elementary schools. And then we'll move on to looking at potential alternatives that you guys will be discussing and wanted to talk about based on one of the prior meetings. Okay. So wanted to find out if there were any clarifying questions before we would move to public comment first, and then we'll start to have more of the analysis and prioritization conversation. Yes, Aaron.
So I'm not certain if this is the appropriate time, but I have some additional comments about some of the programming at Montgomery High School. Would this be a good time to share that? Okay, so the International Baccalaureate program at Montgomery High School is the only one north of San Francisco and outside of Sacramento. It serves hundreds of students and prepares them for college as well as possible program. And what I've learned recently is that it cannot be easily moved. It requires a certification process. And so what I've been told is it could take 2 years for a new school to be certified as an IB diploma. And that means that our current IB students who are juniors would either have to transfer to a school that has an IB program or just give up on earning that diploma. And so I just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
Thank you. Allison, I saw you grab the mic. Did you have a?
I did, thank you. So just looking at the draft report, is this appropriate time to ask a question about that, or do you want us to wait?
So yeah, for the draft report, after we go through the prioritization, then we'll actually, if we have the time tonight, we'll walk through the report and get any comments,
Okay,
edits,
so I'm gonna-
questions, et cetera.
Shelf it.
Any other comments or clarifying questions? No? All right. Ben, it looks like time for public comment.
Okay, everyone, before we start off on public comment, I just want to make a quick comment on public comment. So tonight we are limiting comment to 1 minute per speaker, and we're going to be cutting off public comment at 1 hour so that the committee can have time to continue discussing here. What I do want to say is that we have heard your voices, we've heard our voices, we've heard the community's voices. There's lots out there. This is a very painful decision, a very painful situation we're all in, so we have heard you for sure. Recently, we received back all the committee members just today have been looking over the results of the survey. Nearly 2,000 people responded to that, including over 600 comments in there as well. Many emails, many town halls, all of that. So I do want to say we have heard your feedback loud and clear across the board. So please keep that in mind as we're going into public comment here. So like I said, we're going to be limiting this to just 1 hour. So if you are making public comment and have the ability to say, I agree with what someone else just said so that someone else has time to come up, that would be great for those new voices as well. So with that, we'll start into the public comment. Oh, and yes, also in general, as folks are making public comment, if you agree, you can raise your hand as you agree. There are folks that are looking around as well to try and capture as folks are agreeing to comments as they're being said as well. So with that, first up will be Mary, and also I'm going to apologize ahead of time for names. I will do my best. First up is Mary Fige, followed by Alexa Forrester, followed by Chris Gunther. Mary?
Hi, my name is Mary Feige, and I've been a teacher at Monroe Elementary School for 29 years. I'm extremely proud to be a part of the Griffin family, the Griffin team. I'm sorry. I'm no stranger to school closures. My children went to El Molino High School when it closed. We have difficult decisions that have to be made. Our whole community is going to be affected by them. We have proven that we are strong and resilient, and we're going to make it through this too. That being said, no school or neighborhood should have to stand before this panel or the school board and beg and fight to keep their school open. Please do not pit communities and schools against each other. And honestly, who speaks up the most should have no impact on the decisions that are made. There's protocol to be followed. I know that closures are inevitable. Option 6 put forth by the Maria Criollo students is the clearest option. Budget cuts need to start farthest away from the classrooms. It's time for the district office to take a hard look at what staffing and other spending cuts can be made at the
Thank you,
top
Mary. That's
and then
1
make
minute.
them public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next up is Alexa Forrester, followed by Chris Gunther, followed by Norma Bracco.
Hey, everybody. My husband, Chris, is going to talk in a moment about why we think it's a bad idea to close Monty, but I'd like to say a quick note about your role in all of this as a political philosopher, which is I am in my day job. If you cannot in good conscience recommend closing Monty, don't. If you cannot in good conscience recommend closing Elsie Allen, don't. I am glad that the board asked for community input, but it is unfair of them to ask you to make their hard decisions for them. You are free and autonomous citizens, and you cannot be forced to recommend a course of action that you don't actually agree with. You did not create the mess that the district is in, and it is your role to advise, not to solve the problem from them. So at the end of this discussion this evening, you are not comfortable recommending the closure of any high school. Let that be your advice to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Chris Gunther, followed by Norma Bracco, followed by Kara Abrego.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I just want to reiterate what one of the committee members was saying in part, that if we do recommend to close Monty, we're not simply recommending that Monty gets consolidated into another high school. The geography and current attendance rates will require that Monty students get redistributed to up to 3 different high schools. I'm hoping you fully understand what that would mean. Closing Monty doesn't mean moving programs, it means dismantling them. You cannot just merge these fully fledged programs, theater, music, athletics, and IB, and the hundreds of students in them into another high school. Closing Monty means taking well-loved and fully functioning programs and destroying them. Closing Monty means scattering our students and their families to the wind. Even worse, closing Monty will be a step towards resegregating our already too segregated town. How is any of this going to make our community and our schools stronger? It won't.
Thank you, Chris. Next up is Norma Bracco, followed by Kira Abrego, followed by Briley Wire.
Hi, my name is Norma Bracco. This is my 29th year at Monroe, and I'm not sure why I'm here or what the right thing is to say. What I say should not make a difference in what school you decide to close. We are all special and unique. Some board members and district personnel have been to schools and have seen how hard we all are working. Monroe has a strong community. I'm now teaching students whose parents I taught my first years at Monroe. This has been a rewarding experience. With school closures, this will probably increase class sizes. As our classes grow, early intervention support will be needed. Keep in mind that these classes will need extra support. Please make thoughtful decisions so that we are not facing this situation again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kira Abrego, followed by Briley Weir, followed by Christy Boblet.
Coming from a student going to Montgomery High School, following Ms. Gary's point, I think we should not be taking away the IB diploma or IB program at all, since people enrolled in it, students enrolled in it, won't have the same credits they would if they were sectioned to a different school if they're not enrolled in Montgomery, like in district. And I think that we should not take that away because it would like destruct their college applications, their life, career, and what they want to do in the future. And I don't think that it's in the best interest of the kids if we take away Montgomery and the community it has. I'm in like the Fresh Start Club, and we have like been creating this amazing community with my friends, my teachers, Miss Costin. She has done everything we can. We just had a cart for all the teachers, giving them supplies and everything they need. And we got like a fundraiser that helped us gather all this money for the teachers and the well-being of our community, just changing the reputation of our schools. So I don't think we should take account of the reputation our school has from the fatality that happened. I think it shouldn't matter and like what we should decide.
Thank you, Kara. Next up is Briley Weir, followed by Christy Boblet, followed by Lisa DeCarbo. Sorry, is there Briley Weir? Okay, Christy, go for it. And next up will be Lisa DeCarbo, followed by Peyton Rich.
My name is Christy Boblet. We live in Sebastopol, and my son attends Montgomery High School as an interdistrict transfer student. My son is African American, and one of the main reasons we drive to Monty each day is because of the rich diversity of the Montgomery community. For the first time in his life, my son attends a school where he truly feels seen, represented, and supported. This is a gift that has no price tag. Montgomery is the most diverse high school in Santa Rosa, and the staff and administration's commitment to supporting and empowering youth of color and other students from underrepresented groups needs to be recognized. Through Montgomery's Black Student Union and the many programs they have, they're amazing facilitators. My son is able to celebrate, share, and explore his culture and get support in his journey as a Black youth in Sonoma County. Being a student of color in Sonoma County is extremely challenging, and the committee and board needs to be aware of the importance of our kids seeing themselves reflected in their school so they don't feel isolated. The work being done at Montgomery in this area is the reason we travel into this district for this school. I fear what will happen to my son's mental health
Thank
if
you,
he can't
Christy.
do that.
That's the
Please
1
save our
minute.
school.
Thank you very much. Next up is Lisa DeCarbo, followed by Peyton Rich, followed by Sota
Good evening. Thank you to all staff and committee members for your time dedicated to this process. This is not easy for any of us who feel passionately about saving our respective schools. As such, I ask for each member of this group to have a voice in the discussion process after your small group work. In the classroom, it is imperative for the teacher to allow each student to speak in a class discussion, for that is a fair and democratic process. At the last Consolidation Committee meeting, I wanted to hear from other members, but their voices were silenced by louder and more dominant voices in the group. The power of having a committee made up of a variety of perspectives and biases will balance each other. This will then allow a balanced decision to be made that benefits all students. Biases, half-truths, and inaccurate or undecided information must not be used to influence committee decisions. These only continue to perpetuate false narratives, both for your decisions and the larger community that is also participating in this forum.
Thank you, Lisa. That's
Thank
the
you
minute.
for your fairness and
Thank you.
democracy.
Next up is Peyton Rich, followed by Sota followed by Ethan Cosgrove.
Hello, my name is Peyton Rich, and I am a teacher at Montgomery High School. I first want to acknowledge that asking you all to recommend schools to close is an unfair task, and that every one of us here deserves to keep our school. At Montgomery, we have already gone through the horrific tragedy of a death on our campus just a few years ago. In the face of this devastating event, our staff, administrators, and students have worked tirelessly to create and support a beautiful community. We have developed new policies, programs, and procedures that have helped us grow stronger instead of sadder. Our community and its success are inextricably linked to our shared location and history, and to ask us to give that up after we have worked so hard and endured so much would be devastating and cause irreparable damage. I ask this committee to please take this into consideration when making their recommendations. I would also like to agree with what students and Ms. Geary have said about the IB program, and also what Ms. Boblet said about the importance of the diversity on our campus. Thank you all for your work on this very difficult task.
Thank you, Peyton. Next up is Sota followed by Ethan Cosgrove, followed by Karen Sanders.
Hi, my name is Sota and I'm here to firmly advocate for the continued operation of LC Allen High School. This institution is more than just a school. It serves as a home for our students, families, staff, and alumni. Many of us have built a solid foundation here, which has prepared us for success beyond high school and in real life situations. Personally, I have gained valuable life lessons and excelled academically during my time here at LC Allen High School. It is essential to evaluate the students of LC Allen High School based on their integrity, resilience, and determination to break generational poverty and to exceed academically, both in college and career. We need to keep our communities united by their true strengths rather than fragment them with rumors and false judgments. LC Allen High School is the heart of Southwest Santa Rosa and Roseland. It is crucial that we support our students instead of causing further harm and displacement. As adults, it is our responsibility to advocate and protect our children. They have faced enough challenges, from natural disasters to a pandemic and significant societal change. Now more than ever, our students require more support and resources
That's the 1 minute
to thrive.
timer. Thank you.
If our children are indeed our future, we must invest in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ethan Cosgrove, followed by Karen Sanders, followed by Mitchell Johnson.
Hello, my name is Ethan Cosgrove. I am an educator at Spring Lake Middle School, and I am pursuing my master's at Sonoma State. And for the last 2 years, my project has been about school district consolidation. As part of this process, I have researched how the district configuration in a county or area affects enrollment at the individual schools and ultimately how diverse those schools are. One of the things that is found in these studies is that counties that have a single district reduce the amount of segregation of both wealth, race, diversity of all kinds. Districts, and especially cities such as ours, that have 9 different districts struggle with this problem because educated and affluent flight from one district to another is so easy. Some of you are closer to an elementary school outside of your district than inside. The problem is now that state schools can't solve this problem. This can only be solved if they're part of the same district. I hope the board looks at
Thank you,
getting rid
Ethan.
of their
That's the
K
end of
through
the 1
8
minute.
programs and adding them to
Thank you.
other districts instead. Thank you.
Okay, next. Mitchell Johnson, followed by Risha Rule.
I don't have a student in SRCS anymore, graduated several years ago. So I'm speaking on behalf of the community that votes for bonds and parcel taxes. We are currently paying a bond to upgrade Montgomery to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. Montgomery has a student body of about 1,400. So considering a closure at Montgomery is going to anger a significant amount of us voters who likely refuse to approve any more bonds or parcel taxes for what we see as a political reason for closing a school, not a financial reason for closing a school. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next up is Mitchell Johnson, followed by Risha Rule, followed by Laura Haupt.
Hello, I teach within the district. I don't need to tell you how special all of our schools are and how special all of our students are. So I think it's in our best interest to protect enrollment as much as we can. And if you do feel the need to make a recommendation, please focus on how we can maintain enrollment in our school and prevent a greater decline in enrollment than we're already experiencing. Because if we don't take that into account, we're going to be back here 2 years from now or 3 years from now in an even worse position, even closer to the prospect of the state taking over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell. Next up is Risha Rule, followed by Laura Haupt, followed by Jessica Mullen.
Hello, I echo the sentiments of the other parents and administrators that have stood up here and said, if you can't make the recommendation to close the school, don't make that your recommendation. I really would like for you guys to consider the number of programs that are at Montgomery High School that aren't available at the other schools that are on the list. I also think when we're looking at disparities across our county or our school district, and we're considering the impact of disparity and programs should be something that is one of the considerations that's being made. We lost my train of thought. In addition to that, I really think that we need to figure out if we're going to be redistricting, looking at the impact of how a redistrict looks from a funding perspective. Property taxes are a lot higher in the Bennett Valley area than they are in the southeast side or even the southwest side. And I think when we're looking at the
Thank you,
disparities,
Risha. That's the end of the 1 minute. Thank you. Next up is Laura Haupt, followed by Jessica Mullen, followed by Crystal Schroff.
Good evening. Thank you. My son is a junior at Montgomery High School, so I want to speak to the strength of the school and to please ask not to close Montgomery High School. I am also a music teacher for Rincon Valley School District, and I can attest to the strength of the music program both at Slater Middle School, which feeds into Montgomery High School. At both Slater and Montgomery, they have various levels of band, orchestra, and choir. 3 bands at Montgomery, plus jazz band, plus orchestra, plus a full-time choir teacher. This is not just a program on paper only. This is the strength of the program and the strength of 2 amazing teachers at Montgomery and an amazing music teacher at Slater.
My son benefits so much from the community of the music department, as well as IB, as well as athletics. We need to keep Montgomery open. I would love to have, if we do need to close the school, I would love to have more students from around the city at our school.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
That's the 1 minute. Thank you. Next up is Jessica Mullen, followed by Crystal Schroff, followed by Christina Kramer.
Hey, hi. I'm here on behalf of my two boys who attend Proctor Terrace. I see a lot of other Proctor parents here. I'm hoping you can raise your hand, even if you're not giving public comment. Please don't forget about elementary schools. We're a walkable neighborhood school with high levels of parental involvement and kindness. Please don't forget about elementary schools as you decide about high schools. If you close half the elementary schools, you trade the district's future for the present. Think about other ways to save money, whether it be administrative cuts, whether it be a Ridgeway co-location, anything but closing half of the elementary schools in this district. I want to thank the committee specifically for recognizing that the fault line doesn't prevent building at our school location. And it is my sincere hope for the coming fall that we will have the honor at Proctor to serve an even larger neighborhood at our little neighborhood school for this upcoming year and for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next up is Crystal Schroff, followed by Christina Kramer, followed by Jason Wicking.
Good evening. So last week I was at the town hall and I listened to Monty students passionately advocate for their school. Yet I was disheartened to see members of this committee whose children are in schools safe from closure, engaging in side conversations, talking over the students and not paying attention to those who held the floor. Why even attend the meeting? So I was inspired to come here tonight to speak for Monty, because as a parent of a Monty student, I am confused as to why it is at the top of the tier for closure. Your chart on page 40 of the draft shows that it's the only high school that is in the green when looking at graduation rates. They have a brand new building in construction. 73% of their students are in walking distance, and they are in a well-positioned spot on the map to cover the entire quadrant of the city. It's consistently in the middle of your different ranking charts tied with other schools. I don't understand why it's at the top of the chart. So it feels like there's a bias against Montgomery.
Thank you, Crystal.
despite
That's the end
school
of the 1
working
minute.
tirelessly to improve
you.
itself.
Next up, we have Christina Kramer, followed by Jason Wicking, followed by Catherine Nguyen.
Thank you, Christina Kramer. I have a sophomore from Montgomery High School. I'm here to speak on behalf of Montgomery and also address some of the comments from the last Consolidation Committee meeting. My son and my daughter before him were transfer students. There is concern about the transfer out rate from Elsie Allen. I can tell you that if Montgomery High School closes, we will go someplace where my son can play baseball and where he can have all the opportunities. I want to tell you that the state defines equity goal number 1 as follows. Quality schools will produce comparably high academic achievement and other positive outcomes for all students on all achievement indicators. State Attorney General guidance on school closure states, students only benefit from school closures if they are reassigned to higher performing schools to improve equitable educational opportunities and abide by the legal mandate to alleviate segregation. All districts should proactively plan for displaced students to access higher equality educational opportunities.
Thank you, Christina. That's the 1 minute. Thank you. Next up, we have Jason Wicking, followed by Catherine Nguyen, followed by Joel Grogan.
Hi, I'm Jason Wyking. My oldest son is a freshman at Montgomery High School. He has 2 younger brothers, and we are going to be there for 12 years. They're all 4 years apart. I'm here representing Montgomery High School. We moved into the neighborhood 20 years ago, knowing that we wanted to send our children to that school. It's wonderful. The students that have come from that school and all the time, even before my son has attended, have all been wonderful. Everyone here speaking from Montgomery has made awesome points. They've said it more eloquently than I could. The other thing I want to say is if you're talking about budget, right hand needs to know what left hand is doing. Aside from the bonds improving the school, the city just sent a notice to us. We live 1 block from Montgomery. They're updating all the services to Montgomery High School this year. The school is going to be really primed to move into the future and serve our community and our students better than any other school in the district, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jason. Next up is Catherine Nguyen, followed by Joel Grogan, followed by Margaret Boone.
Okay. My name is Catherine Nguyen. I do not wield the power of wealth and legacy to sway this fight. I can only draw on my lived experiences as an LC graduate and a Southwest Santa Rosa resident to demand equity for our community. LC Allen was doomed before its inception due to the city's continuous negative image of Southwest Santa Rosa, specifically Roseland. How do you expect an area that's been historically deprived of resources to thrive? It is by no surprise that LC is on the chopping block, the only school in Southwest Santa Rosa defined by its residents, the majority of us, people of color, coming from histories of war, violence, and oppression. Let's call this by its true names: racial discrimination, classism, and white centrality. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for equal access to resources and to be treated with dignity.
Thank you, Catherine. Next up is Joel Grogan, followed by Margaret Boone, followed by Erica Lapanovich.
Good evening. I'm Joel Grogan, proud parent of 2 Proctor Terrace Elementary students, and I don't want to see any of our schools close. But I'm here to speak on behalf of many of the TK to 8 families in the district. SRCS has a deficit of trust with the community, especially parents. And without trust, people can fear the worst. An abrupt move to a 7-12 model to save high schools is unfair to our TK to 8 families and would result in the loss of hundreds of students and decreased future enrollment. Leaving the district's charter schools K-8 would exacerbate the tension by limiting a more preferable and widely accepted model to a small portion of the community. These factors would result in a tremendous financial hit to the district and ironically could drop enrollment to the level that requires us to close a high school down the road. There is not enough time, political capital, or community trust for SRCS to rapidly convert its middle schools to the untested idea of combined 7 to 12.
Thank you, Joel. Next up is Margaret Boone, followed by Erica Lapanovich, followed by Concepcion Dominguez.
Good evening. Looking at the statistics being used by this committee, Monty serves 625 low-income students, which is more than any other school except Pioneer. Monty also serves the second highest number of students of color, only Pioneer serves more. And we are one of the most diverse campuses in the district. We also have the second largest capacity and more gyms and playing fields than many of the other schools. Our school is easily accessed by public transit and is close to amenities, including a free breakfast cooked every day by the church next door. We have 92% attendance rate, an incredibly strong and popular admin team, award-winning athletes, award-winning art programs, our IB program, our award-winning Best Buddies program, and district staff recently referred to us as an exemplar school. We have a strong community that has fought hard to keep our school open, and that is reflected in our inclusive environment, involvement in the district, and our higher attendance rates. Don't close us just because we would be convenient to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Next up is Erica Lapanovich, followed by Concepcion Dominguez, followed by Sofia Nagra.
Hello, committee. Thank you for what you've been doing. I used to think that I could have done your job, but geez, no, you guys, all of the stress that you guys have been going through, everything that you've been going through, all of these comments, I just want to say thank you. You guys looked over the data. I looked over the data. I agree with what you've come up with so far. And I just wanted to say thank you for following the data. The 3 elementary schools, I don't think anyone's arguing about that. The question is going to be coming down to the high school. So I want to agree with the political science philosopher who came up earlier. You don't have to come up with a consensus. You don't. This is a free country. Yes. 62.7% of our community did not voted for anything but the 311. Remember, look at that pie chart, you guys. It just came out. 62.7% of our community wants anything but the 311. That's K-8, 7-12, anything. Yes, growing pains. Yes, it's going to be hard to do anything but close the 311. But guess what? We can do it. Sonoma strong. Santa Rosa. Woo!
Thank you, Erica. Next up is Concepcion Dominguez, followed by Sofia Nagra, followed by Judith Correa.
Hola, mi nombre es Concepción Domínguez y vengo representando a LC Allen. Mi preocupación muy grande es saber que quieren cerrar una escuela como esta. En realidad, mis hijos fueron graduados ahí con muchos honores y todo, sé el impacto tan grande que va a tener en mi comunidad al cerrar una escuela como esta. Y pues como cualquier high school, no debería de estar cerrada porque pues, los jóvenes ya ahorita preparándose para ir a la universidad deberían de estar, que el dinero que van a usar para poner policía en las escuelas lo usaran más bien para fondos para las escuelas abiertas. Y pues aquí siempre yo apoyando a las high school y a mi comunidad. Y me daría mucho gusto que yo sé que todos van a ser afectados y me gustaría que tomaran una buena decisión al final para todos.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Que en vez de poner en las escuelas, deben usar el dinero.
Hi, my name is Concepcion Dominguez. I'm here on behalf of representing Elsie Allen. My worry is that you guys want to close many schools. My children went to that school. They graduated with honors. I feel like this choice is affecting many students. Students should be getting ready for college, not worrying about schools closing. The money for
En vez de que vaya a poner policías en las escuelas, lo usen para.
Instead of using money to have police officers at the schools, they should use the money to be able to support the students at the school. I know this is a tough decision, but I just want you guys to know that this decision will affect everyone around the community.
Thank you. Next up is Sophia Nagra, followed by Judith Carrera, followed by Amy Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia Nagra, and I'm a sophomore at Carrillo. I speak to my community and the board when I say, now that the closure of some schools is inevitable, I would like to urge you to suggest adopting the 7 through 12 model with some conditions. First, it is imperative that you can convey 7th through 8th graders and 9th through 12th graders be kept separate as possible. This would address parent and student concerns surrounding the wide mental, physical, and emotional gaps that could make this model harmful. We must not forget the issue of enrollment and use the school's community as a growth as an asset, opposed to the result of irresponsible leadership. If we must expand these facilities, I propose that you suggest using the bond money previously said to renovate the district office. We must instead use this unique structure to our advantage, using select student mentors, more opportunities to work at accelerated levels as underclassmen, greater collaboration, etc., attracting more students, ultimately helping with the budgetary deficit. Additionally, we must ensure the board prioritizes student safety by re-implementing SROs onto school campuses.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. Next up is Judith Correa, followed by Amy Williams, followed by Natalie Brunamonte.
Good evening. My name is Judith Correa. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Santa Rosa Community Health. We serve over 42,000 individuals, 1 in 4 Santa Rosans in Santa Rosa for primary care, mental health, and the majority of whom are Hispanic, Latin, and 25% of whom reside in 95407 zip code. Elsie Allen High School families are Santa Rosa Community Health families. I'm asking that you please have an extra consideration for Elsie Allen High School as we have a health center on site, which serves 1,500 individuals a year, 3,000 visits a year. Again, we're already seeing rises in mental health inequities across all of our high schools. I know that I'm here representing the particular health center and the particular high school, but I echo what everyone else has said here and the impacts that will be felt by every single member of our community. But I'd like to highlight that Elsie Allen has been a source of impactful, culturally responsive
you. That's 1
education,
minute.
resources,
Thank
and
you.
community of tens of thousands of youth of color.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Amy Williams, followed by Natalie Brunamonte, followed by Riley Weir.
My name is Amy Williams, and my daughter is a freshman at Montgomery. I graduated from Montgomery as well. Closing the school is such a larger undertaking as the most diverse high school in Santa Rosa of around 1,400 kids, many of whom are students transferring from Elsie Allen. Where will that many kids go? Parents will not be volunteering their kids to go to the high schools suggested to them, and the amount of attrition of kids leaving Santa Rosa City's schools is high, heading to Petaluma, Windsor, and Rancho. We've already begun talking about carpools. Closing Montgomery will cause a mass exodus, so our tax dollars do not continue to go to Santa Rosa City School District if you close Montgomery.
Thank you. Next up is Natalie Brunamonte, followed by Briley Weir.
Hello, my name is Natalie Bernamonte. I have a simple request. Please prioritize ease of access to schools that serve low-income, underrepresented, and marginalized members of our community, many of whom cannot be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And another call for Briley Weir. Okay, then I think we are finished with public comment. Thank you, everyone. Now moving into the prioritization discussion.
All right, so Lynette's gonna, so as we said, we had the middle schools you guys ranked already, so we're gonna focus on the high schools and the elementary schools. Is that better? Okay. And really for the high schools, you had 3 tiers. The top tier was LC Allen and Montgomery, and the question was which was going to be 1 or 2. You had a lot of discussion at the last meeting, and so we'll give you an opportunity if anybody else had any other comment that they want to make with regards to the 2 high schools, give you the opportunity to do that. And then what we'd like to do is do a spend the dot exercise and provide you each with a dot. We're going to put the names of the 2 high schools and have you come up and put your dot next to the school that you would rank first for closure. And then we'll look at the count and we'll see if there's any conversation with that before we move on to the elementary schools. Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
I'm just wondering whether this group is comfortable with the spend a dot exercise, or whether we have to discuss and raise our hands and be accountable for whatever decisions or choices we make. A spend a dot it makes you anonymous.
An alternative, if we're doing the dots, if we could do it as we did the boards on Friday, where as a committee, we put our information on the board and then it go to you guys where you can report out the results. It's a proposal I would make.
So just, I want to make sure I understand. You're saying within your groups or as individuals, you'd be noting whether it was high school A or high school B. Each group would be providing that information and then we'd tally it here.
Yes, for example, at my table, we'd have 4 dots represented between LC and Monty. And then you could take each of the group's boards and then compile them to report out to everybody.
Got it. Do you want to?
I think based off of our conversations last meeting, I think it's clear that there was a lot of great insight and real valid points to be added to the conversation for both sides, pro, con. I don't think it's a good use of this time to come up and do dots for either as pitting the schools against each other. I would rather spend time in a solution, coming up with the alternative propositions that we can put forward. I don't want to spend 45 minutes. I personally don't want to spend 45 minutes on this. I would like to make a motion that the school closure and consolidation committee push through 2 high schools evenly, LC Allen and Marie and MHS Montgomery, as a tie to the board to meet the requirement of the 311 recommendation, and that's their decision to make. If they like choices, we'll give it to them. But I don't think that we need to do that here.
Following up on Ross's point, I have a concern about
the LC Monty choice, because I've heard that closing just one high school might not even solve the problem. And eventually, in a year, 2 years, maybe we would have to close the other one as well. And so staff at Montgomery is wondering, well, if you close Montgomery, move a lot of us over to LC Allen, and then LC closes, that's pretty damaging for not only the staff, but the students as well, who have to deal with 2 closures. So I guess I'd like more information on what that projected deficit going forward.
Ultimately, the board can make the decision about they can choose more or less of any grade level. What they're asking for is the ranking. If the committee chooses to put forth 2, that's up to the committee how to do that. Based on the savings and the restructuring, we would expect that we are trying to right size, and that was one configuration is the 311. It could be, an alternate scenario. There's no guarantee that attendance falls at a lesser rate or that at a lower rate. And so we will always need to be adjusting and paying attention and projecting further out. At this point, closing one high school, if we were looking at a 311, would have that sustainability for the right sizing based on the information that we have at this time.
I think that, in my opinion, no matter what we choose or say or do, it's going to be offensive to a whole lot of people. And so if we are forced to make a ranking based on whatever we had discussed, I want to second Ross's motion to this committee and let it go to a vote so that we can actually spend time on more important things, which are the ideas that we have about how we can make the least amount of damage with what has to be done. Knowing that we have no say in any of it. Knowing that we have no say in any of it. But I second the motion.
So let's do thumbs up, thumbs down. The motion on the table is submit the, where? Do you want to hold? Submit the rankings for the high school.
Brandon, sorry, I just want to make one quick comment before we do that vote there, just for the committee as well, because we've heard from a couple folks. I just want to give a chance for other committee members. We heard from over here that potentially we could do a spend a dot in a different way slightly than coming up in here. We've heard first and a second now, so we could go to vote on, do we just put in a recommendation with the 2, but maybe from this table over here, I haven't heard necessarily on this idea, but I'd like to hear some other voices on this perspective of just putting forward the 2 tied versus voting back and forth on the 2. And also just a reminder to the committee and everyone else as well, whatever the committee comes up with is not the decision. As we all know, it's going to the board anyway, regardless of what the committee is coming up with. It is input to the board, obviously, but it is not the decision. So if it goes one way or another or a tie from the committee's perspective, that it will be reported in our recommendation. But again, it's not the decision.
And Ed Services, our Educational Services Department has been in contact with IB. They do have some information. If Dr. Roderick Cathro would like to share.
Yeah, we've been in contact with a veteran administrator of an IB school, and he's given us some guidance, but we're actually waiting to get back information back directly from the International Baccalaureate Organization. We should be able to give that to you tomorrow. So. All right, yeah, we've been in contact with a veteran site administrator or principal from an IB school, and he's given us some guidance, but we really want to get the right information. So we should know probably by tomorrow directly from the International Baccalaureate Organization. Yeah.
So thank you.
This is for the committee's discussion. That was just additional information because the question came up or comment came up from the committee earlier.
So this committee has been meeting since early fall, and we've received copious amounts of information. And I kind of want to repeat what I ended with last time, which is that I'm deeply concerned that a lot of the nuance and detail of this process is being lost in the emotion of what's going on. And as somebody who's here first and foremost looking out for the most marginalized students, because I think anyone in this room hopefully could agree that this district is really only as strong as the students that have the most cards stacked against them, period. I'd like to sort of build on Ross's suggestion, and as opposed to saying that we agree that these are tied in this ranking, I would like to put forth the idea that this committee refuses to pin them against each other, and that is our decision, and that this is as far as we are comfortable taking this ranking system that, to be honest, has been a bit delivered to us as opposed to completely absorbing the nuance of our expertise, which is why we are here as a committee and community members. So I feel like this is a rare opportunity for our voice to be heard a little bit stronger in this decision.
Big push. So I feel very comfortable amending my motion. I think the idea again is that this is emotionally charged. There was great conversation last week. We have zero power in this group to make this final decision. Let's not waste our precious moments here on this stage spending time on who's edging who. I think we decided last week, we were split 3-3, that we decided the 3 schools that were scooted down and 2 were at the top. And I think if we can add your language to my motion that we refuse to pit schools against each other and move to submit 2 schools forward. I use the word tie as, not that they're tied, but we push them equally forward for the board's consideration in our 3-1-1 ranking.
Accept.
Doing what I'm told. Oh, yeah.
You know, the more that I thought about these scenarios as leaving after our meeting a week and a half ago, the thing that was central to our discussion last time was equity. And closing either one of these schools, I don't see those scenarios as building equity for the people who have been historically disadvantaged in the city. We all agree it's a problem, and either one of those is causing equity problems. And I would urge us to, maybe in our report, to say that that is one of our big concerns, because that's what I was hearing coming out of this committee last time.
Okay. I agree. And I also think that we should recommend to the board that they look at the reasons for this dropping enrollment at Montgomery and LC Allen, because there are ways in which each of those schools is crying out for more support from our district and from the city. Montgomery's is tied to many factors, but many of them have been in the press Democrat. And Elsie Allen obviously is suffering from historical disadvantage, and I would like those things to be mentioned in the report.
Any other comments? No? All right, so we're back to, we have a motion and a second to recommend to the board the high schools as shown here. Basically, I think the way the term I've been using is just 3 tiers. So the top tier is Montgomery and Elsie Allen, middle tier Santa Rosa High School, bottom or the third tier Pioneer High School and Maria Carrillo High School. All right, so thumbs up with the motion of presenting it to the board, and have the note with regards to the language about refusing to pit them together. Just that the committee is recommending that these schools be presented in these 3 tiers. And part of the conversation that the committee had was their strong refusal to pit the 2 high schools together at the top. And that was one of the reasons why we're just putting it forward this way, not a ranking. And Lisa wrote down the notion, and we'll make sure that's included in there with regards to the equity concerns between the high schools. Okay, so again, just so I can. All right. So we have the high schools. Thank you. So the elementary schools, what we were looking to provide to the board was 6 elementary schools, not because we are closing or that the committee is proposing to close 6 schools. But again, the board is going to be looking at all of the data that you're looking at. They're going to be listening to public comment. They're going to be getting additional potential information from staff. And so we're just trying to provide them with as many options as possible with regards to the schools that they are ultimately going to select and determine regards to closure. So at the last meeting, you guys did came up with the top tier of schools for closure, which were Steel Lane Elementary, Albert Biela Elementary, and Brook Hill Elementary is that top tier. And so what we're looking for is just an additional tier of schools, again, in order to provide the board with that flexibility as they're looking at maps, as they're looking at all of the information to figure out what schools make the most sense for the district with regards to closure. Okay, so we were going to propose using the spend the dot for selecting that second tier. And there were some concerns expressed with using that methodology. And again, in this case, we're looking for that second tier and not necessarily at this point, ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so before we push forward with that spend the dot, we had one other option. I don't know if you think that would be a potential other way of selecting that second tier of schools, or if anybody else had any other thoughts or concerns with regards to how to move forward with selecting that second tier.
I think what we did on Friday within teams was beneficial for us to come up with tiers. I personally think the ranking by numbers is very challenging. And like it's been said, these are recommendations the board is going to ultimately make the decision on. So Friday's system, the way we worked within table groups on the boards, which then went anonymously back to you guys to then report out.
I think there's an issue with individual. I think there's an issue Brown Act wise with individual dots that are anonymous versus up top. The difference with the Brown Act where it was okay is you were working in small groups and reporting out your discussion as far as a group. So that's a little bit different than saying, oh, here's my secret vote, because secret ballots are not okay. So I think we need to be really careful about what that, about how that works. We can bring out the posters from last week if that would be helpful as a refresher as to where you guys ranked them and kind of continue through that process where we were.
So I'm concerned about a change in the direction. When we came together, we were instructed that the board wanted 3-1-1. We worked very hard to make certain types of decisions. And now we're being asked after the fact to consider another 3 schools. I'm concerned that if we had known that last week, we might have ranked schools differently. And so to now take a second stab at this and add 3 more, for me, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
The work at the last meeting, most of the groups did some kind of tiering process already. If you look at page 75 of the draft report, you have the group report outs as well as an average. If staff is incredibly committed to ranking, you have the average numbers right there of the work that was already done by each of the table groups last time.
And we can certainly, Lynette we can pull those out. And we can look at, as you said, the groups did a ranking all the way through. Most of the groups did a ranking all the way through the elementary schools. And at the meeting last week, you got through the top 3, and then it was getting a little bit late, and the decision was to come back and finish that portion of it at this meeting. And so it would be really looking at what those scoring and ranking does and continue that process that you started with the last meeting, just to get another level of schools. That I can't tell you. She was wondering.
Oh.
Hand me ours. Where do you want ours? Here, give her ours. Tammy. Tammy. Tammy, this one.
Okay, so the one that you just pointed to, we were told that we needed, the direction was to rank 3 schools. And then we could just put the others in a bucket. We did not rank the next 6 schools. We put them in a bucket.
I just want to give a really concrete example so people understand of what would be problematic about that potentially. So we had our the top 3, for example, in our group as Burbank, Biela, and Steel Lane. Because the rest were in a bucket, and even if we were to pick 3 of those, there's, again, a lot of nuance and rich discussion as to why, if one particular one, and I'll give the example of Lincoln, took the place of Luther Burbank on that, you suddenly have 2 elementary schools that have the highest population of students receiving special education services, which is a deep concern. So any movement of these outside of this committee or beyond our group, the board is going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to consider a lot of things, but it would sort of undo a lot of the work that we put into these. And so I do think that there's, that there's some problems with doing that.
So I just want to clarify one of the things, and it is that I don't believe that that's quite what I had shared as far as what our activity, our goal was for that evening with the groups. It was to say, okay, we need to rank a number of schools so the board has some options. And that was the intention in selecting more than 3 in that next tier. And so some groups ranked all the way through, some did them in the tiers. And I just want to clarify, I want to make sure that, because it sounds like maybe I wasn't clear on kind of the why we were looking for that second tier. I understand absolutely your concern also with geographic issues.
And I was going to say that I think that's part of the reason why we're trying to provide the board with more than just those top 3, because they really do need to look at all of those kinds of things. They need to put let's say the 6 on a map and go, okay, here are the impacts, here's the programs with staff support, and try to figure that out so that they are having the least amount of impact. And so providing them more options to be able to do that instead of, in some respects, limiting. So nope, these were the 3 from the committee. So that's the idea with that, is that the more that we're providing them, then they can look at all of those considerations and make sure that they're not overly impacting one side of town, one group of students, one particular program, et cetera. Okay. So, and as you noted, I mean, most of the groups are, I'm looking at there was 2 groups that ranked them all the way through, and 2 groups that did, looks like 3 to 4 tiers. And so we can certainly look at those ones that ended up in the second tier for most of the groups and see if we can get to some consensus with regards to which 3 might be the ones. As part of the conversation, and I need to pull up what schools it was, there was some conversation, but consensus wasn't reached on, hold on, I will find that. On, yeah, Abraham Lincoln, Helen Lehman Elementary School, and Luther Burbank Elementary School is the other 3 to potentially put forward as that second tier of schools.
And just to clarify here too, and I think you might have a comment on this in a second as well, but by putting a second tier with 3 additional schools, we're not saying 6 schools would
No.
close. Because there's obvious limitations, just geographically, if nothing else, that there's no way you could close those 6 schools in particular. I think geography comes into play, but we're not saying the 6. I think what we're trying to do, and to Ross's point earlier, we're trying to hopefully give the board some alternatives to consider, and some of the alternative scenarios would consider closure of 4 elementaries. So I think we do need to give, I guess I would propose that we do need to give the board some information to go on beyond just the 3, not suggesting that it's 6 that are closed, but suggesting that there's another tier for them to think about as they're looking at potential alternative scenarios.
Yeah, again, the thought with this is just its options. Yes, Janelle.
Would it be possible to, instead of just saying we're putting forward 3 and 3, to say, if you don't choose Brook Hill, for example, you're going to choose this other one? Because a lot of what we did we talked about geography. So as Andrew mentioned, so, if you took out Biella, then maybe there's another school in that little cluster that would be the next in line, but Biella would need to stay open because then you're closing too many schools in that group. So would it be possible to kind of do that, like connect them and then a second tier?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I think you're starting to potentially edge toward, that's what the board has to figure out. They have to look at that and go, okay, if we, and I'm just naming schools, if we close Steel Lane and Brook Hill, there's no way we can close Biella because all 3 of them are next to each other. I know they're not. But the board, and that's the whole reason for that second tier, so they can go, okay, if we have to close these 2, we can't close that 3rd one because they're next to each other, so we do have to pull from this next tier of schools. And so we're trying to give them those options to be able to do that.
So I would like to recommend then that if we are going to discuss and determine a second tier of 3 schools, that we be allowed to explicitly state, we do not recommend X and Y school both close. We do not, because of geography or because of a special program, and just that we have a clear, explicit, because again, if we were tasked with digesting like a serious amount of data to get to these decisions, for that to be lost in that final moment would not benefit anyone.
So, oh, did I see a hand? Okay. So let's start with, since those were the three schools that you guys were looking at and considering last time for the third tier, were Abraham Lincoln, Helen Lehman, and Luther Burbank.
Can we like describe this to
Yeah.
follow? Thank you.
Or do you have the extra?
Oh, we didn't. But it was, we kind of said, oh, either DL or Lincoln, kind of like one or the other. And so we could respond, we could put that information into this. We have the Are those the ones that have the names on them? No. Okay.
Pero también la preocupación de los señores es que hemos tomado decisiones para decir en qué efecto tendrá sobre la decisión final. Pero hasta cierto punto solamente se puede eliminar y eso es responsabilidad de equilibrar la decisión.
The handwriting is not as pretty as whoever wrote the other one. She's working on the other names. We told everyone that.
You're trying to say.
Yeah, not both. Yes.
Right. Monday.
Well, just put them in that order in case we need to.
And Lincoln is a walking student. Oh, I don't think the job there. So this is what, now they've added the charter.
You're gonna be.
I guess they're projecting it. There we go. Yeah.
Últimamente ustedes
And we didn't want to.
It's a little blurry.
We put them at the bottom.
Right.
Sí, pues sí, aunque sí, por ejemplo,
Oh, that's
pues después
The colors are- Okay. So the first three that were up for conversation at your last meeting were Luther Burbank, Abraham Lincoln, and Helen Lehman. So I'll just start with slightly discussion. Is there anyone that has a comment about no, those three shouldn't be, or those three should be? Anything that you want to share with the I heard.
I got it. Thank you, Ms. Adrian. We got it. I do have a concern again with Layman being on this list. I think that there has been a ton of facility improvements done at Layman. And so my concern is that we are putting it in this second tier, and that would be a loss to the district to close a site that has had an incredible amount of funding and facility upgrades and money put into the school.
I'm going to make a biased comment, full bias, because one of those schools is my school, but I will say that we have the highest migrant ed population at Luther Burbank outside of CCLA. I know we're not using criterion 14 and 15, but for multiple years running, my site that has out of the 7 Title I schools, elementary schools, we've had the highest performance rates on state assessments multiple years running, right behind Proctor Taylor Elementary School, and we are serving historically, since I've been there since 1999, an underserved high SED population, and they're doing it. So I would be heartbroken to see if it ain't broke, don't mess with it. And lastly, we also had a ton of work done during the summer, re-roofed, repainted. We only have one portable, which is the music room. We all have permanent buildings. That's my pitch on that.
Yeah, and I'll note that these, again, looking at the different individual group rankings, these were the other 3 that rose to the top. So anyone else have any feedback before? Yeah. Let's see if we can find a mic that.
So Luther, Burbank, and Brook Hill are near each other, so they shouldn't both be closed. I think that's what we discussed in our conversation. And Biella, Lincoln, and Lehman are all right near each other, and so that's a cluster where you can't. I don't know that you shouldn't close all 3, definitely. And then it may not be good to close 2 of those because they're all right near each other.
And so I think once we decide on which 2 tiers, then we can make notes of those comments to include in the
Yes.
report for Andrea's note and suggestion. All right, so we're going to do a temperature check with a thumbs up or thumbs down for Luther Burbank, Abraham Lincoln, and Helen Lehman being the second tier. So can I get a thumbs up? Thumbs up, I can live with it, or no? Yes. And we will then. That is definitely a mixed bag. All right, so let me see what that's a hard one. I'm trying to. I was trying to look at which one, just when you're looking at the totals of what you guys were looking at and ranking. The next one that was on the list is just strictly numbers wise would be, hold on, Monroe. To pull off. Yeah.
Maybe we can look at it not as a slate, but individually is what I was just gonna suggest.
Okay. To see which one it is, if it's, all right, so we can start with Luther Burbank. Start Luther Burbank, looking at them, so the thought, looking at them individually to see if anyone, see if we have a consensus on as individual schools versus as a slate, because maybe there are 2 of them that everyone might be okay with and one that's a concern or vice versa. So the suggestion is to look at them individually and get that same up or down and see if we can start building a tier that way. Maybe it's just one of them that needs to be replaced versus another. Does that make sense? So we'll start with Luther Burbank. Again, thumbs to keep it in the second, to include Luther Burbank in the second tier. Let's do this. So thumbs up, I agree with leaving it in second tier. I can live with it in second tier, or not at all in second tier. Yeah. And, right. Top, it's making it second tier. Question, okay.
Ms. Minor has a question.
So we have the charter schools on there and we know that those have to close. So why aren't we looking at those as options? Because we're closing a site, not the school. The site has to close. So why aren't we looking at
Well,
the
no,
site?
it's this, that remember, as far as the financial implications are concerned, that's about the programs. That is the school. Now, you're saying the charter schools eventually may have to move because they're in boundaries, out boundaries, they have charter petitions, all of those things. But as far as the cost savings for that 311, it is the school, it's the program that is closing. That is where the fiscal savings is the school.
Now you're changing what you said because you said we have to look at the site. Now you're talking about programming. So we're supposed to be looking, my understanding was we were supposed to look at the closing of the site, not the programming.
So there are potentially individual programs at any school site that could be moved, for
Right.
example. However, when you're looking at the cost savings, you're saying if I close X school, I am, the administration of that school site, there's the cost savings. The students will be dispersed potentially to other sites, one, multiple, whatever cost savings is with the staff that's assisting those schools, those students, et cetera. The board could decide, okay, that school is closing, but that school has X program that's excellent and we want to move that program. Is this something that the board can do? But the impact is when I say the closure of that site, it's that school. I guess I don't
The
want you to think that
administration, the staff.
correct. It's all of those things together. If the board decides to save a specific program at the school, that they can do. And we looked at all of those programs that could be moved to other schools. But when you're looking at that, it's all of mostly the people, and some of it is the cost of actually operating those facilities.
Okay.
Another question? It's like we've been using them all this time and they've been working, and tonight. Here. And I'll take it back.
Okay, as I'm looking at geographically. Looking at geographics, if we close Brook Hill, we can't close Burbank. If we close Lincoln, Lincoln's kids can go to Burbank because Brook Hill's already on the chopping block. Correct? So that would leave 2 elementaries on the west side of town and still have 3 elementaries on the right side of town.
And I'm going to add, Luther Burbank is the only feeder school in our district that goes to LC Allen. Most of our students live on Corby's side of the freeway. All of LC Allen's students come from our partner districts. The only LC Allen students that come from SRCS elementary schools, one of my students spoke tonight for Elsie, comes from Luther Burbank Elementary School. They come from the woods. We call it the woods. All the wood streets there, Corby, and Olive Street. Most of our students are on that side. And if you close our school, most of our school is going to go to Shepherd Elementary School in Roseland because they literally live on the other side of the freeway. It's closer. We will lose a huge portion of students.
That one's working for sure.
So I think what you're seeing is happening, and I know that it happened in small group conversations. When you talk about elementary schools, you've got to talk about the elementary schools in groups. And if those schools at the top end up being the ones that are initially slated for closure, there's impact, there's trickle down impacts because you've got to look at where the students live and where they would subsequently go to school. You can't have this conversation in isolation. So it's very, very difficult to select a quote unquote second tier because everything is dependent upon what happens at the top of the food chain and then making some decisions that try to make whatever those elementary school groups are as whole as humanly possible, and dealing with not only that, but also whether a school is what I call a walk school or a drive school. And that's super, super important when you're looking at how you get from here to there. So while there's conversation or agreement at the top of the food chain, you can't have that conversation because it has to be a holistic conversation based upon what happens at the top.
And I think the part that and completely understand that, and that's the work that the board is going to have to work through. And so when you are potentially coming up with the second tier, it's not that you're saying close these 3 plus this one, or you can't close. They're going to have to look at the 6 that you provide and do that analysis with staff and figure out what's where are the kids, where are the programs, in order to figure out which ones they're actually going to close. So that is the work that the board and staff supporting them is going to have to do. Just push. Don't hold it. It's just a push.
It worked last week.
Here, he's handing you another. Everything worked last.
I've been doing this for 6 months. I know how to click it.
Here, just use mine.
I think, I don't know if this is realistic or this might take more time, but what if we did an exercise where it was, if we close Steel Lane, then what other 2 schools in the second tier would happen? So that'd be like 1A, and then if we close Albert Biella, what other 2 schools would you choose? That would be 1B, and then Brook Hill, 1C. I don't know if that would address some of the feedback that the committee is saying.
Yeah, and the comment was that that might be easier than the logistical challenges. And again, I want you guys just to take one step back. You're not going to be able to solve all those logistical and program challenges. That is what the board is going to do. You're trying to give them options based on the data that you have. You're trying to give them options, and they will have to look at that and go, as Janelle was saying, as Andrew was saying, oh no, we can't close those 3. They're right there, right next to each other. So it needs to be this one versus that one.
Can we go back and do the thumbs up on Burbank and see what happens? Please? If this was a Robert's Rules, I'd be calling the question, but. Please, can we?
Yep. So we'll go, again, we're trying to figure out the second tier, giving the board options, understanding that they have to figure out what can close and not close because of where they are. So one at a time, thumbs up that yes, Luther Burbank should be in the second tier. Thumbs to the side if I can live with it, and thumbs down if no, should not be in that second tier. So mostly no's. Same thing, Helen Lehman. Wait, we have a question. Assuming your microphone works, I'm coming.
When we started this process, again, we had to decide if it was to do 311. And so we would have thought, again, very differently in the scenarios we have. As far as I'm concerned, we picked the 3. Any other options that need to go to the board and let them handle it. Because if they wanted options, they should have told us that in the beginning. And so I'm not going to sit here and go back and forth trying to figure out a second tier when we already came to our suggestions. We already did it with the high school. It needs to go back to them and let them make that decision. And I feel that the public needs to go to the board and have whatever conversation they need to have with them in relation to trying to figure out this process. I would like to get to the options so that we can recommend to them what we would like to see. This is not our realm right here. We did what we were supposed to do, and I would like to move on from that, and that's where I'm at.
I think what we're trying to get to accomplish with the elementary schools is what you did for the high schools and for the middle schools. You ranked multiple schools so that the board has options. So if the board were to go with the 311, they have no, obviously they can look at any schools they want to, but trying to get the benefit of all of the work that the committee did is trying to pull those forward. Yes, sir. Oh, and what Lisa was noting is that some of the scenarios with regards to the alternatives require more than 3 schools, potentially for elementary school closure. And so that is another reason why that would be important.
Based on the ranking from Friday or from 9 days ago, the top 6 schools in order of ranking is Steele, Albert Biela, Brook Hill, Abraham Lincoln, Helen Lehman, and James Monroe. So those literally are how people voted from their tables last time we met. And if the exercise is to make a top 6 recommendation, then those are the top 6.
I just want to reiterate the 311 was the task originally given to us. And if we start saying, well, it may be different scenarios outside of 311, then my rankings may totally change based on how that would be built. So if we're looking at the 311, I think it's already been done. If they need other options because of different formats, then I think that's a different conversation with ranking.
I'd like to just say that if we're closing Biella as our top ranking, and then the other 3 schools that are on the west side of town, makes no sense to me.
I just want to clarify what ranking we're looking at, because in looking at the report that was put together and shared out, the ranking of the top 6 elementary schools that would be voted to close would be Biella, Brook Hill, Steel Lane, CCLA, Lincoln, and Santa Rosa Charter for the Arts, based off the rankings that were done the last time we met in the report created by the district.
And those are based on the rankings that were on the poster boards. Yeah.
I just want to clarify because I thought I heard that some groups did not rank past the 3. Is that accurate? Did I hear that correctly last
So-
week? There was a misunderstanding that some groups on these boards past 3, they weren't ranking and they weren't prioritizing. Yes or no?
Two groups ranked them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in those orders. 2 groups did them in tiers. So they said these, I'm making up a note, these 3 are our top, these 4 are in our next, these are in this, and so they did it in like group rankings. 2 of the groups did not rank the charter schools at all. 2 did include the charter schools in their ranking. One of them, again, actual, 1, 2, 3 kind of numbering, and one of them just put them all in their bottom group. And so that's what's reflected here, and that's what's reflected in what's in the report, is these and those groups.
So for instance, if I'm looking at this board and it says 2, are those being submitted on equal billing in the second tier?
Correct.
So then calculations on the ranking 1 through 6 are not inaccurate because we don't have we don't have a consensus 1 through 6. We haven't done that yet. I'm just pointing it out because I'm hearing that mentioned a lot to like go by these boards, but some of the boards aren't ranking past 3 in terms of priority. Does that make sense? So this is a kind of I feel like this is a new discussion we're having because not all of us were having the same discussion last time.
Yeah, not all of the groups did them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some did them in tiers. And so when putting them together, it was if they put all of there were 3 of them in the top tiers, they all got 1s. If there were another 4 in the second tier, they all got 2s. And so that's how it's reflected. And so the averages are reflecting that. So if the average or the totals put them in a kind of natural order, but it is based on some that were ranked and some that were placed in groups. Does that make sense? So, and I think, like I said, there were 2 groups that didn't look at the charters at all, and 2 that did. And so that also impacts what those totals and those averages are because there were 2 groups that didn't consider them as part of the closure discussion.
Because the groups did not score them the same, that's what we're trying to do now, is trying to have a consistent scoring that includes the charter schools and that includes the ranking. Because there is no way to create that because the groups didn't approach the work the same. And we understand why. It's like that was it was allowed to get through the process because you had to be able to process and think. So it's like, okay, now can we get to a place where everybody is ranked using the same consistent method?
Oh.
For all the complexities that everyone has mentioned, I personally think it's impossible to rank them the way that you're asking us to. And I will not be doing that personally. I will not be participating in that ranking.
So go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think I just want to go back to recommending if we can keep the top 3, which have been consistent in every iteration of this, and allow the board to just hear our concerns that we're offering them the 3, and then we strongly recommend against pairing these, and these, and that's what we discuss and decide here, because I'm hearing a stronger concern against particular groupings being very problematic. I don't want that lost. That's an important message from here. So here's the three. They can do their homework and figure out a decision past that, unless it's these, couple of scenarios that we are most concerned about. I'm not hearing a lot. I'm not really hearing anyone saying offering anything other than that from the committee itself.
I'm going to say this as a person that's in a really bad position up here. I represent the teachers at every single one of these sites. But we're on this committee to make decisions. That's what we agreed to do when we joined it. And this is they're all horrible decisions. Every single decision is horrible, will hurt countless numbers of people. And yeah, there's 1,000 permutations. But we need to make a decision. Can we vote on the second tier and realize that it's a horrible, horrible decision and move on, right? Saying, oh, I won't do it, or we can't do it, or that wasn't our original thing, or we're all here because we agreed that we were going to put ourselves on this horrible committee to make horrible decisions. And here we are. Can we just we need to vote on these three and see what happens. And if we're in, a mild agreement on it, we need to move on. Refusing to do the job of this committee is not why we're here. We need to, I'm going to have people angry at me at every single one of these schools for years. And I'm still saying we need to vote on this and make a decision. We can't just dither. We can't just say no. You should have said no back in August if you didn't want to be here today in January.
Thank you, Catherine. I agree with you. I think the decisions are awful, but I think if we don't make a decision, we're not giving information to the board, and they will make a decision. They have to make a decision. If we give them only one option, those three, they're either going to toss it out, come up with their own thing, but then our committee has not served, I feel, its purpose of giving the board something to chew on with respect to making this decision. If we only give them one option of all we could decide was these top three, the rest are not in the mix, I feel that we haven't done our job as a committee, and especially considering we're hoping, if we have time tonight, to get to some of the alternative discussions. Some of those alternatives require the closure, or may require the closure of 4 elementaries. And if we don't give any guidance or input, any caveats, if you close this one, don't do these, if you close this one, don't do these, but anything to go on, if we are just completely silent on it, I feel the board isn't going to have, well, they're going to make their own decision then, and we won't have, we'll have lost the ability to have input.
I just want to echo what Mrs. Howell said and the chair mentioned. We signed up for this to make a decision, and I already feel kind of weird not making a recommendation on the high schools. So to not do that for the elementary schools would defeat the whole purpose of what we've done for the last 5 months.
Oh, I didn't touch. It's blue. Thank you. I respect everyone here very much and all of our varying opinions. We are giving a recommendation by offering 3 schools. To make the most logical choice for the second tier, to do it in the most fair way, would be to pull up the numbers, the rankings that have been delivered to us. They've been delivered to us at every meeting since August. They have been literally handed to us in a big, beautiful binder. Those numbers don't take into account our expertise, our personal opinions, and all the reasons that we're here. So yes, we're here, we're willing to do the work, but we've done that work. And if now the only job is to do another layer of the work for the board to make their decision, then fine, pull the rankings from the notebook and we don't actually have to have any further conversation here. In my opinion, we can save time. We can just go off of the numbers, and that's the second tier. And if our expertise is not going to be taken into account, then I'm not sure why we're trying to have a discussion.
I just want to say my earlier recommendation that I made 25 minutes ago would have already been done by now.
You have one there that's working.
I just thank you for everyone's comments. I just wanted to clarify that my distaste with this process is partly because so much has come to light since I joined this committee in August, and I didn't know all of this information in August. I didn't know we would be closing 5 schools in August until I went to the very first committee meeting. And I don't feel that putting forth 6 names of schools I don't think that the optics are going to carry the nuance of the conversations we've had. And I don't believe that we should be held responsible for that without full information of everything we've talked about in the last 5 months.
All right, so let's do this. We are going to, I'd like to get the temperature of do the second tier so that we have the recommendation versus not interested in doing a second tier. Does that make sense? So I'd like a thumbs up if you are on board with let's come up with that second tier and provide that recommendation to the board for all 6. Thumbs up if it's yes, we're going to figure out that second tier and provide us the recommendation for 6 schools. I'd like a thumbs up. Question?
I would like to ask, if we're going to provide 6 schools to put, then it should be based on the ranking that was collected at the last meeting if we're not going to re-rank all of these schools, which is what I'm hearing is that we're not going to re-rank. Because 2 of the groups ranked them all, so you got a proper ranking score of all 11 elementary schools, including the charters that were counted as elementary, which was what was explained to us. And then you had 2 that put it in buckets, and so their top tier got just a 1 or a 2 or a 3, so you don't have a true ranking system. So unless we re-rank all of the schools, which I heard everyone say no, then you would have to take it off the ranking that was already done, and the first 6 schools that should go there are the ones that are ranked in the top 6 or the bottom 6, which would be the lowest scores based off this ranking. And so I don't understand why are we trying to come up with different ideas? It's already been ranked based on this ranking, and that's what we should be putting forward.
So to echo what a couple committee members have recommended in terms of referring to the original ranking that we received, just so that we can start putting names to this idea. What I see, if I'm looking at it correctly, and somebody please correct me if I'm misreading the data, but we have we have BLO, we have Steele, we have Brook Hill, which we've already named. After that is Abraham Lincoln, Proctor Terrace, and Cesar Chavez Language Academy. Those are the numbers I see. Maybe someone sees it differently. Yeah, we can pull up. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. That's a good idea. We have these big screens.
All right, Lisa's going to find them. I don't know if that's all, don't know if that's much clearer to see than what you have in front of you, but so yeah, let me look at the. So if I can, 30s. And Allison, when you were reading those out, you were looking at the relative scores or the rank scores?
Yeah, I was looking at the rank score. We could look at the score total, but and I did misspeak it when I mentioned Proctor Terrace. It was, so we already have Brook Hill and Steel Lane and Biella in our top tier. So the next highest scores are Lincoln, James Monroe, and Charter, Cesar Chavez at 80. If we're including charters. If we're not including charters, then yes, that's Hidden Valley would be next. Just reading numbers. It's not an opinion, just reading numbers.
Allison, just to clarify, you are looking at the rank scores, not the yes, no scores. So just to clarify, the rank scores add weight because they only scored 11 of the criteria. The yes, no scores did 24 of the criteria, but just to clarify.
So yeah, clarification that we do wait a little bit if we go in the ranking scores on some of the criteria. So this, Herman, you can read that better than I can. Can you read off what would be the next three highest score total? Not the rank, but the score.
I also want to be clear that the list that I've suggested are not my personal suggestions. So I'm doing it again, and these are not my personal suggestions. The earlier lists were not my personal suggestions. It's just based on how each four groups rank them. But the way that this is set up is Steel Lane is number 1, Abraham Lincoln is number 2, Albert Biella is number 3, James Monroe is number 4, Brook Hill is number 5, and Hidden Valley is number 6, based on rank scores. That does not include the charter schools. If charter schools were included, then you would have Cesar Chavez Language Academy would be number 5, and then Brook Hill and Hidden Valley would be tied at number 6 at 78 with the rank score, which would make this whole process even more difficult.
Thank you. You had something first. Yeah, and I would argue, I think we have the top three. I don't think that just throwing those into the mix or pulling one off, I think those are set. I think everybody reached agreement on that. If we're doing this method, it really is just to figure out what 3 additional schools for that second tier. All right. And so maybe one question, since we are going back and forth about this, is do you want to include the charters in this conversation. I'm just, some are saying yes, some are saying no, so I want to make sure that the committee is all in the same place on that. No, because then.
Not speak really loud. I'll use this microphone. All I'm saying is that all of our kids, I know it's so hard to sit here and make assumptions about kids you don't know, and they're at every single site, and we have no idea that just because the car they drive up in, or what language they speak, or what side of town they're on, that we all think we know what their jam is. We just don't. And every single kid in this town is under fire for having to be uprooted. So I'm just saying, I don't know why we're not talking about charters, because all of the public schools have to go through this not in your stomach process. I don't understand why they're immune. And all I'm saying is that some of this is also about money. We can't get to that $11 million. They're going to have to find more money from some other thing, because the way we're talking, I don't know how you get to the numbers we're trying to get to. And CCLA is worth a ton of money. And so for practical reasons, it may not be beyond the 3 we talk about, but it should be considered, because if you need to make your numbers, it's worth the most. So just from the money standpoint and no emotional ties to what's the right feeling, I think we have to include it.
Okay, so you go straight off the, oh, Ben.
Going to start bringing in the charters. One of the boards or multiple boards talked about merging the charters into, I think, one campus. So I think that's important. If we're going to start talking charters, we need to look at alternatives that are on the board.
So we first want to look at just the straight closures. Then we are talking about the alternatives. And if that one of the alternatives is merging them, that is an alternative. But if we're looking at straight closures, that's the first level, because putting them all on one school site would not reap the savings that were noted for that particular charter school if it's simply moved someplace else. Does that make sense? So you're looking at those ranked scores, and I don't remember which order, so, but it's Monroe, Cesar Chavez, Lincoln. If you're including the charter, if you were not to include it, then that next highest one is Hidden Valley, just based on numbers. Yes. Got it. We have moved things around. All right. We have a request for as a former coworker used to put it, a comfort break. She was from the South. So how many are there? Should we? All right. So since there's 2 restrooms back there, 10 minutes, it is, can I do math? It's 7:50, so 8 o'clock. You can. Jessica, is the Zoom back up? Okay. All right. We think we might have mics that are working. We'll find out soon enough. Okay, so the discussion we were having was based on the original rankings, or just the scores effectively. These were, if everyone in the public, if we could please quiet down so the committee's able to talk and have a conversation, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So based on the original scoring, these would be the 3 schools in the next tier, just number wise. Monroe, Cesar Chavez, and Lincoln Elementary. Okay? So we're going to do a thumbs up. Yes, I'm good with that being the second tier. I can live with that being the second tier. Or
Sorry, I think we're going to get another stalemate if we try to vote all three at the same time. So I guess I would propose that we take it one at a time, like we were starting to do previously, one at a time, and maybe have a fourth school in there as well as we go through to see if we can get a fourth school into that second tier, even if we can't agree on anything else beyond that, or a fourth and fifth school into the second tier, even if we can't agree beyond that, but make some, as opposed to trying to take all of them in one shot.
okay, that works. So one at a time.
And you have to vote to put 3 of the schools in. You can't vote down every single school because that's not going to help us move forward if every school is a down vote.
So the suggestion is to vote one by one on these schools, whether or not they're included in the second tier. Okay? And the point Lynette was making is if we go through these and you vote all of them down, then it kind of defeats the purpose. Right? So we're going to include in.
But if, like, for example, if I vote no on all 3, but the committee votes yes, it's the majority that moves forward, right?
I want to see if that one works.
Oh, it worked. Okay, got it. They paired them. So prior to our break, we were saying that the 3 that are now in quote unquote second tier with the charter is based off of the data that is given to us with the ranking. So why are we going one by one to keep it in that tier? We've already agreed if we're going with the ranking, that tier is already built.
Because you've had a conversation, and we've had it from the very beginning. We provided those scores and those ranks to help organize the information and all of the data, because just as an organizing mechanism, but there is information. There's the discussions that you guys have been having with geography, with all of those other things. And so we want to give the committee the opportunity to make sure that that is part of that decision and that conversation, and not simply, here's what the number said, so that's what they are.
No, I understand that. I believe prior to the break, we put those Post-its in order based on the ranking. So my question is, can we ask if we want to vote, if we want to have that second tier based on the rankings? Does that make sense?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Ben, do you have since you were hoping for the other, do you have an objection?
Yeah, I guess my only comment is that's based on a weighting that we didn't fully come to agreement on. That's based on the rank scores, not the full yes, no scores. And so it's based only on 11 of the criteria that have rank score resolution on them, not the 24 criteria that had the yes, nos. So when we look at the 2 scores, just as a reminder, the first row of scores it's unweighted, but covers yes, no for the majority of the criteria. And it is slightly different ranking than what this would be versus if you just look at 11 of the criteria that had the detailed rank score.
I'll be honest, no one in this room, no one in this district wants to do this. And I heard what Catherine said about doing the job. We were tasked with 311. That was the very first thing we've been asked. It's been asked of us. We have done that. As a committee, we have done multiple different rankings as groups. We have it on the paper. We have scores. Can I propose that we put forward the 311 that we have, and the district can look at our individual boards, which we've already ranked, in addition to the information we have, in addition to all the other things we've listed and talked about. I really don't think we are going to come to a consensus tonight on tier 2. There's too many schools that are ranking. High school and middle school, we had 4 or 5. We've got 14 schools, guys.
I'd like to second Janine's motion.
I would like to agree with Dr. Wilson, and I just want to add that in my head, and obviously I work for the district, and I work for the district, and I agree with everything Catherine said too. And people are going to be upset, and people are going to be angry, and there's all of these emotions. But I also know that well, I don't know 100%, but I've heard rumblings that perhaps the French American Charter needs to move. Perhaps CSCLA needs to move. And so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, these schools are going to move. Where are they going to go? Are they going to go to a closed school? And then does that form mean another school has to close? And so in my mind, I'm thinking all these different scenarios, and it's just really difficult to visualize, thank you, what it's all going to look like. And which is why I think that initially we came with this idea, like, we're just going to look at the financial aspect of it. We're just going to look at the cost of the school, the cost of the savings, because once we start talking about all of the things and the emotions, it's so impossible to make a decision and rank it by 6, because all of the schools are special. And so I think for me, that's why it's been hard to come to. I'm just going off of this is how much school costs, this is how much you're going to save, and make it very easy. I'm not anticipating or expecting other people to do that, but I think that every time we go, well, what about this? Or, well, what about this? It's creating more chaos in my head, is really what it's doing. And I'm just being honest. Yes, it's muddying the waters. Thank you. This is why Miss Minor is on my team right here.
So there's also well, let's start here. There was a first and a second-ish. That's what I was going to. So the motion was, as I understood it, just go with that next tier based on what the scoring provided, for lack of a better word. Do I have that right? I'm getting a yes. And you understood that that's what you are seconding. Okay, so I got a yes that that was the motion and that that was the second, was to go with this second tier, basically these 4, because those were the ones that rose up on the ranking, taking into consideration that it was the rank score and not the relative score. All right, does that make sense? So this would correct. The first tier was based off of this work. The second tier is looking at the rank score, since everyone did not rank all of the schools the same in this one to be able to get to that next tier of schools.
I just would like to add to the motion maybe that if this passes, if the consensus is yes, we would do that we qualify the nuance of the weighting in the report.
You mean the 11 versus the 24, that part of it?
Right, exactly.
I would also say, if we can note too, there's been a few comments around, well, if you close this one, you can't do this location. So there might be some couplets in there. That would be noted as well.
So I think first we can get to agreeing
Yes,
on
yep.
this, and then we can have that, okay, everybody, so-and-so doesn't believe that this one and this one can close, and we can make those notes to add to the report as well. All right, so we have a motion and a second. The friendly amendment is just make sure we're being clear in the report of how the ranking and the different works. So a thumbs up is yes to this being the second tier. Thumb to the side, you can live with it. Thumbs down, no. down to them. So the majority can live with it, or it's a yes? Okay. So to make note of, there were a couple of you that mentioned, yeah, if you close this one, you can't close this one. If you close this, you can't close that. Who wants to raise their hand and let us know what those are so we can make note of that and make sure it shows up in the report? So I,
Yeah, I just wanted to make that because I think this is what's so difficult with us trying to come to consensus at this point. It's like you cannot close all 3 schools on the west side of town. That's impossible. It's possible, but I wouldn't do it. So fine. The top three was what we all chose. If we can live with this, make sure that if you decide to close one, that you should not close something neighboring to make it difficult for the teachers, for the staff, for the parents, for the children. If you want to talk about equity, there you go. You cannot close 2 close together and make it extra difficult for everybody to go to school.
so if we note, if you're going for the top two, just don't close 2 neighboring schools?
Correct.
Okay.
Like, look at the geography, look at how they get there. Are they a walking school? Do they have to be bused? Because that has to now take into account. Biella is a walking school. So how are you going to get them from one location to the other at an expense, right? So that has to take, you have to drop one thing, but then you're paying for another thing. So just make it make sense.
I did not vote for this, but I just wanted some clarification about closing CCLA. Does that mean that this committee is voting that we should not have that language academy and not have that bilingual school?
The committee is voting on is to provide the board the recommendation of 2 tiers of the schools for them to consider for closure. The board is then going to look at those specifics, the geography, the programs, et cetera, and make the decisions as to which one. I don't think based on the conversations that we've had that anyone had a specific, no, we don't want that program or language academy. This
So it
was
is
the
the
second
site.
tier was based on that ranking.
It is the site and not the program? So if the board did say that, we should close CCLA, does that mean that the program could we recommend that the program be moved to a different site, I guess is my question.
That would be for the board to determine if they want to close that program or move that or not, if they're looking at that.
So again, the proposal is the top tier we did on Friday. The ranking with data for tier 2, which includes CCLA. But I do want it noted, the idea of merging the language academies or whatever that request was over there, which again would look at CCLA. So not necessarily it closing, but it is there based on the ranking. So we're using data to get to tier 2, but with also the proposal of also looking at ideas for the charter.
So that would be the alternatives that the committee can look at. And if that's one of the alternatives that the committee wants to recommend, then we will put that in the report for the board. These should be
Due to the higher concentration of students receiving special education services at Biella and Lincoln, I would like that we recommend that those 2 not both be slated for closure.
Got it. Thank you. Any other specifics versus no neighboring and recommending not Albert Biella and Lincoln both be closed?
This was already said, but just because you just mentioned the 2, we are also recommending that the committee is not recommending that we abandon the Spanish language immersion program, that we are saying we are not. If that is, it's up for consideration just as a site and from a financial perspective only, not as a programmatic. Just in your recap, it wasn't mentioned, so I just want to get it in there again. That
I was about to say something very similar, so get it in there again.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't.
I would also like to mention that Abraham Lincoln is also a walking school. And the children bused in are all specs.
Said Abraham Lincoln is a walking school, so all the students that are coming in via bus are special education students.
Right.
Okay. Any other specific comments about these schools and their interaction? Okay. All right. So moving on to the alternatives. So Lisa, do you want to share the information from the town halls?
So the information from the town that was gathered from the town halls is attached to the agenda. And there were, just a reminder, there were 5 in-person town halls. And then because we did receive feedback that some people were not able to attend those in-person meetings or felt that they were dominated largely by the high school contingent at those, that we did send out a very short, a very short window for a survey asking the same questions as the feedback that we received from the town halls, which was just essentially like a spend a dot exercise for the different alternative scenarios and then input comments, questions, things of that nature. So I can bring up the surveys if you guys want. It's also attached.
Yeah, go to because it wasn't attached when we looked at it this morning. None of it was there. We haven't seen it yet.
So it's an item H in the information items in supporting documents. There it is.
So the scenarios, and again, it looks, we did not, just as we did at the town halls, we did not say you can only come to one town hall. We didn't do any of that. So it is possible that people may have opted to provide input more than once, or you may have input more than once from the same household, things like that. We did receive about 2,003 responses to the survey between Wednesday night and Friday morning. And I believe there were 1,960 who actually chose a scenario. And then there's also, if anyone wanted to look through specifically any of the comments, so you can see that many people selected a scenario without providing comments, and also many did provide those comments. The other piece I'm trying to get here, sorry, just a moment, is the pros and cons and town hall dialogue information. So this is from These are from the in-person. So we had the TK through 8. This first scenario was, sorry, I'm trying to see which site it was. So Town Hall number 1 from Montgomery. And that, sorry, I'm trying to see here. Okay. So pros and cons. Sorry, I'm trying to be able to see this a little bit better. So lots of great feedback, nuances, very similar to conversations that have been had here in the committee meetings, such as the difference in grade levels or how would shared athletics work or things of that nature. The board is asking, or we are asking, because it's what we will be able to vet for the board would be kind of the top 2 scenarios, or there is an option, that you can provide some nuanced guidance in there, but we would be looking for the top couple of scenarios specifically. That helps us to prepare what those cost analysis would be specific to what the scenarios are recommended to go forward.
Or do they want top 2 specific detail?
That would be up to the committee to decide how they want to provide that forward. The more detail, I would ask that the committee have a discussion about that. Mr. Chairperson.
It's a big conversation to just open up. But, so I think to the committee members here, I think right now is when we've all seen the information. We've been to town halls. We've seen lots of pros and cons feedback. We've seen the high level different alternative scenarios here. We've heard requests for hybrid versions of them, one or the other, pros, cons, reasons not to do them or to do them. So I think right now we have the ability as a committee to go to the board and present a alternative scenario or 2 alternative scenarios or considerations for alternative scenarios. So I guess I'd like to propose that we have some discussion on how or if we want to present any of these scenarios to the board, and it may not be so specific as, well, it's this school to here and this school to here, and this one gets a 7 to 12 and this one gets a TK to 8, or maybe it is, but at least we can give the board our perspective on the guidance to them of how to interpret 2,000 bits of feedback, 600 comments, et cetera, all of those things. You have a mic. Yeah.
I think we should honor those that went to the town hall meetings and spent the time to give feedback. I would like to propose taking one of those 2 scenarios as the purple, which was the highest percent, which was the standard scenario.
I went to 2 of the town halls and I walked around and I heard the same comments. Nobody liked 1, nobody liked 2, nobody liked 3, nobody really liked 4. They voted for 4 because it's the only of the 3 that offered all 5 high schools to stay open, and that was a priority for a lot of people. So it's kind of like saying, would you like roadkill, 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 or a stale sandwich? And everybody chose the stale sandwich. Nobody wanted any, they were all horrible forced choices. So, and and then you kept hearing everybody say, can't we just vote for the original 311? So it made the original 311 that everybody was cringing more attractive. I think that I'm worried about just taking a blunt object and saying we're going to do one of those solutions. I think we really need to offer, get out the scalpel and make something that is a little bit more complicated than what those proposals were. I think that we can come up with something that isn't just so straight across the board. That will be a better fit. And again, I keep going back to our table's 4 things, that we need to do the least amount of harm to the greatest number of people. We need to get this boat fiscally sound and stabilize our student population and our money. And then third, we need to always offer anybody who gets displaced better opportunities and more access. And then four, the reality is whatever we do for the teacher's sake, the kids' sake, and the family's sakes that are already making plans to go other places, some of them, is that we need to say what is doable in 3 to 5 months. And if this district is going to slash 30 to 40%, 45% of its admin in budget cuts, who's spending all this summertime making this fly? Because we remember how COVID was very complicated. And I think we need to maybe not just take one of those pie charts to do what we need to do. That's my take.
Russ, I just want to say I agree with you. However, that option wasn't in the pie chart, so had it been, I would definitely have agreed with you. We can do a mixture. There's no reason why the cookie cutter has to stay one shape.
I just wanted to express concern about the 7 through 12 model, even though I would love all the high schools to get saved. I have a rising 7th grader, and I have many friends who do. And many of my friends and people in the surveys expressed that they will not send their 7th grader to a high school campus. On top of what Ross said about the ability of our district to nimbly adjust to that kind of scenario, I'm highly skeptical.
I agree with Aaron. I think the attrition, if we closed all of our middle schools and created 712s, I think we would lose a lot of kids out of the district. And I also think that it's not possible to do just as a sweeping everywhere, because we know that 700-800 kids at Rincon Valley Middle School don't fit at Carrillo. So are they going to be an exception and everyone else has to do 7-8, 7-12, and they get to have their 2 schools, right? So it's not feasible everywhere. And, it really ignores the need for middle school. I'm 25 years as a middle school teacher. You can't just toss these kids to a big campus and say, oh, it's fewer transitions so it's better for them. That's not how that works. So I don't think the 7-12 model is a feasible model.
Just a question back maybe to the committee of this. I think, I went to most of the town halls and read through all the feedback here as well. And I think, what Ross was saying, a lot of folks were giving feedback that roadkill, stale sandwich. Was that what it was? It was go with a stale sandwich. But that's when we're looking at the all or nothing for implementing these. And yeah, I agree that you can't implement, maybe can't's a strong word, but I think you can't implement all of these across the board, especially in the time frame that we have, and expect to implement them well. But I guess my question is there a scenario here where you could implement some of them? So 7 to 12, no, not on all campuses, but maybe on 2 of the campuses. And it's not all of the middle schools that get closed, but maybe it's 2 of them. It's something like that. I think, and one of the teams brought this up in discussion, and maybe this is worth some separate discussion as well. In order to do any of the hybrid solutions where you might mix and match and put something else together, I think you need to look at the Ridgeway campus and look at the financial aspect of Ridgeway, not for closure, but for consolidation onto another site, to see if we could save enough money there to then allow us some flexibility. So that's a question. I think it's a motion to ask the question. I would like to investigate or hear more maybe from Lisa on the feasibility of the financials for Ridgeway. We've talked a lot about all the other campuses. Ridgeway was considered on and off through it, but not fully considered. But maybe with respect to consolidation of Ridgeway onto another campus, is that, if that were feasible, I think that could free up alternative scenarios for us.
So, is that a motion?
So again, as we've talked about, it will really depend on the overall scenario. If you wanted to include that as part of your recommendation for the board to explore, that would be when we would bring back additional information on that for the board to take into consideration to see the overall feasibility based on what's recommended and the board is amenable to exploring.
Thank you. So, I agree. I would like to see a variety of ideas come to the table. I think that what is good at one school may not be good at another. And I think that although a 712 is not ideal everywhere, it might be really great somewhere. And so I would like to just ask a clarifying question. I mean, is this how this platform is going to be? Is we're just asking questions, or are we actually going to have some time to sit down and be like, here's some ideas, and then present those ideas to the group without the microphone question, microphone question, microphone question?
That's not how tonight was agendized, explaining that we would be in small groups. So I think that we do need to stick to the group discussion.
Part of my question. Well, then can we, I mean, what time is this meeting supposed to go till?
That's up to you guys.
Oh, well, I can leave right now. I mean, I'm parked really close. My point is, I think all of us, if that's not the way that this meeting is going to happen, then we have to reconvene at another meeting and then bring those ideas forth, right? Is that the
So-
correct to assume that we have to do that?
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying
I don't
that
understand what I'm saying.
you don't know what you're saying.
At this point, I don't.
That
No.
individual people might come forward with an alternative that is not one of these for the full committee to consider.
Well, I mean, I don't think everyone agrees that we should go all 712.
Right.
And I don't think everyone agrees, well, we can't go all TK 8. We know that based off our boundaries. And nobody wants to see a 6 through 8, right? I mean, we're not doing that, correct? So that's why I'm saying I think we all want to see a variety of ideas. And if this is not the place for that to happen, do we shut it down tonight and come back on the 3rd, which is what we were supposed to maybe do?
Well-
Or do we shut it down and then reopen 5 minutes later and talk about some ideas?
I think this is the place to happen. It's not each group come up with this and then we pull it out, because that's not how it was agendized. But if somebody has hey, I think that we should do X, Y, or Z for the committee to consider and discuss, then this is the time and the place to do that.
Okay. I would like to think, okay, I've got some ideas.
So hold on.
All right.
Oh, well,
Do I get to give my idea? We got to get this ball rolling.
No, go.
I have to be at work at like 7 a.m. tomorrow. Okay. So I think if any high school could go 712, it'd be Elsie Allen High School. I would love for Elsie Allen High School not to close, and a 712 is doable there because they have the facility for it. They have the room for it. They can separate the grade levels very easily. They have a ton of bathrooms, which no other high school has. And it would save the fact that they no longer have a feeder school. So that's my first definite idea. And at that town hall, the parents had really good ideas about a 712. I think it would be a wonderful pilot program at Elsie Allen without the idea that it would go to every high school. And then I would double down on that by saying, if we're going to do a TK through 8 anywhere, please don't hate me, Allegra. I would love for it to be a Comstock Middle School. Sorry. Bring it on.
Hold on, Anna had her hand up first before, or do,
So I just had a quick, I don't know if we ever actually talked about this. I think we talked about it like really early and then it just kind of was away. Have we actually talked to other neighboring districts, specifically for Elsie Allen, and seeing if they would be interested in taking Elsie Allen? I mean, has there been an issue
You-
to where we could,
That-
was that
that
never
is
a
an
thing?
entire district reorganization process in order to move boundaries and move property from one district to another.
Okay, so that's,
And it's not something that is quick, requires votes of the board, I mean, of the borders, votes, a vote by the voters of the district. It is a long drawn out process that at least couldn't happen in the next.
but I mean, if we at least open the door for that, they don't, yeah.
So there was there were two portions, two steps of the consolidation process started.
Uh-huh.
And the other districts all adopted resolutions saying they were not interested in discussing consolidation, which that could be the same thing with reorganization. It's, again, that there's a lot to it. It's not something, some conversations have happened and the answer was no.
So it got shut down.
So that's just
So I guess.
throughout Santa Rosa, the city boundaries, there's not an interest from other districts to talk about consolidation and reorganization.
Okay.
I just have a quick clarifying question. Because if we did a mix of scenarios, it would be different depending on where you live, which is not, necessarily equitable depending on what each family would prefer. My question is, and given that smaller charter middle schools are attracting students away, which makes me feel like families want that. How will it work with the attendance boundaries that are redrawn given any scenario? Will transfers be revoked? Will families not have any option except to go to their new assigned site, depending, and regardless of whether it's a K-8, 7 to 12, whatever is where they live?
So we've been sharing pretty widely at the town halls that there will be a transfer process and there are priority rankings based on continuing students and things of that nature. So that will depend on capacity and what that all looks like. But yes, that is part of the consideration.
Because I fear that that will draw students away from perhaps the schools that we are reconfiguring and want to attract students to.
Potentially, and again, it's partially on capacity and continuing students.
Lisa, can you tell me if Elsie sits in a secondary and elementary district or no? Oh, secondary.
Just a second.
Thank you.
The question was whether Elsie Allen sits in the secondary district or the elementary district. It's in the secondary only.
I just wanted to say one more thing about like larger scale consolidation. And this comes from being like an outsider that worked with San Francisco Unified and Oakland Unified, which are quite literally massive cities with entirely unified districts, and then moving to Sonoma County and it absolutely blowing my mind the sheer number of districts. We took a lot of time in this group looking at enrollment charts showing absolutely no signs of doing anything but plummeting in terms of projected enrollment for many years into the future. We all know what the housing market looks like. We all know that there's a lot going on with even potential federal closure of Department of Education and lots of reason to believe that there could be more families pulling for homeschool and private school and all sorts of other options. I just want to put out there that even if consolidation with another district is not on the table right now, that I would really urge us to not do anything so out of the box that we have too many schools that wouldn't potentially smoothly fit into a transition, into a consolidation model with other neighboring districts in the future. And I actually would really urge that we push ourselves to align as much as possible if there's ways to look at, what the majority of other districts are doing and really not veer from that, because I just fear that as miserable as this process is, that there could just undeniably be some larger scale consolidations happening in the future.
So in the spirit of, kind of continuing to add to ideas, I really would like this committee to put forth a recommendation that involves, I don't know the right terminology, if it's disapprove, if it's revoke, if it's disband secondary charters from other districts. I would like that to be in our report as a recommendation to, kind of more aggressively try to make that move so that we're writing checks to other districts. And I'd like that to stop since we're in this position of having to close schools because we don't have the money.
Just for information purposes, there are very strict criteria and reasons why a district can disapprove a charter. So it's not simply the board deciding, oh, we're not going to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there, that there are 7 reasons why a charter can be denied. And if it doesn't meet one of those 7, even if the board doesn't want it, they have to approve it. So
thank you. That's good information. So whatever the pathway we need to explore to see, can we do it? Let's, full steam ahead. And if we can't, cross that bridge when they come to it.
Okay.
But I would like to show that voice. Should I let someone else take a turn or can I suggest something for the board? So currently Santa Rosa Middle School actually feeds 3 high schools. We feed Elsie Allen. We have a large population that goes to Elsie Allen. We have a large population, obviously, that comes to Santa Rosa High School. And then we are having a ever-growing population that are going to Piner. And the topic of the thought of feeder schools has really come up for me in this last month of really thinking about the ramifications of certain schools closures. And so I want to second the Elsie Allen 7 to 12 in terms of reinstating a proper feeder for that high school. I'd like to also look at numbers and seeing the numbers of students who are choosing to transfer out of Comstock. So as an alternate scenario to the 311, if we're looking at building any other 7 through 12s, considering Piner as an option of 7 through 12, that would mean closing Comstock and then leveraging Santa Rosa Middle School as an alternate comprehensive option for those who want that 7 to 8, who don't want the 7-12. And that could potentially continue to feed to those 3 high schools.
So Piner 712, you said closing
Comstock and maintaining Santa Rosa Middle as a comprehensive middle school option that continues to feed Elsie, Santa Rosa, and Piner. Yeah, good.
and then Ben.
So I wanted to address the comments. There's been a lot of comments about families leaving and taking their kids and going elsewhere. And I think that for some families, yes, I think that that's true with anything. And I think that when you're looking at the community that Elsie Allen sits in, those families and students that have chosen to go elsewhere have already gone. And there are 1,000 kids still there. And the reason why there are multiple students at Comstock that don't go to Cook is because Cook no longer exists. And the parents have to then get them to Comstock because there's no other option for them. And so if you were to turn Elsie Allen into a 7 to 12, the students would be there. They would go there because they're already there. They have not chosen to leave. And so I think we have to be very careful when we start talking about, well, if you don't do it this way or you don't do it that way, we're going to take our kids and leave. I think that's great for some kids, but that's not the majority of families in Santa Rosa. They're not going anywhere. And we need to figure out a better way of offering whatever we're going to do based off of the parameters for this committee and what the board has to do, which is cut a tremendous amount of money in order to save the most schools that it can and to meet our financials. And so I'm hopeful that we can talk about some new ideas, or I think that this is, one of the things I think is this is an opportunity to do things a little bit differently. And what it is going to have to take is people to have an open mind, and that if we are going to be closing schools, which we are going to be doing, we have to try some things that maybe we haven't tried before that might be a little bit scary. But when we hear like, well, we're going to take our kids somewhere else, or we're going to, if you don't give us what we want right now at this time and keep my school the way it needs to be, then we're out. And that's not helping anyone. So if I just want to put that out there to the universe.
Yeah, just since we didn't capture it before as on the list here, but we talked about the Ridgeway option. And in all of these scenarios, I think that's a key aspect financially to make any of the alternative scenarios work, is to investigate consolidating Ridgeway onto one of the existing high school campuses.
So when it came down your request of having two proposals, I personally think having a mixture in the district is a phenomenal idea. It's something I've mentioned earlier meetings. So the ideas that we have down, I personally like the idea of Elsie being the 712, Comstock being the TK8, and then the rest of the districts, if so choose, to be the standard scenario. I do also like the idea of Ridgeway, but that would be my proposal. But Ridgeway. So back to the original, LC 712, Comstock being a TK8, Ridgeway being consolidated, and the learning academies that we talked about, and then the standard schools. So we'd have a variety of standard, TK8, 712. So as we talked about, parents also have a choice in looking at the different schools to consolidate.
So sorry about the charter and the language academy. What was that piece? I just,
But to still have that as part of the proposal, because we keep kind of leaving out the charters, and I just want to make sure we don't leave them lingering.
but no, she's saying she wants to keep the language academy. Was that about the combination of all the charters on one side, or you're saying separate and apart, just?
So again, your request was to have two scenarios, correct?
What?
Yes.
Yeah, if we're able to have two scenarios, it's not necessary. We don't need to have two scenarios, but if we're able to, yeah, for sure.
We just figured you need more than one because
Okay.
getting everybody.
So again, I'd like to propose the variety that I just listed out. And if we need a second one, to fall back on traditional.
Everyone was first.
It's very hard to consider these without numbers tied to them. And although I'm hesitant to consider 7 through 12, I do think if it did show that it would save money to do that, then another 7 to 12 to consider would be Slater and Montgomery together. The IB program at Montgomery, as I said before, is unique to our area. And there is a middle year program for IB that we don't currently have anywhere in the North Bay that we could expand and strengthen the IB program in our district, and that could perhaps attract students.
I was thinking that since Santa Rosa Middle is on the block as our number one, it would be wonderful to create the Santa Rosa City Schools multilingual school and combine CCLA and the French American Charter as a language academy for the district.
I want to thumb up that. First of all, yeah. No, I think that what we need to do tonight is if we were, the other scenario that parents wanted was all 5 high schools. So tonight's other options besides the 301 it needs to say, how do we craft scenarios that preserve 5 high schools? I think that needs to be our second option. And so I think that LC needs to be a 712 for so many reasons. So I want to put a second thumb on that because they need to feed and build their numbers. Also, I think it's going to help their sports programs over the longer term to build strength there and again, it's about providing more access and more opportunity, and it would for those students. The language academy, again, I think that if we got an opportunity to make things different and draw people in, we've said that CCLA has to leave Cook's site, they need a new site. French is outgrown their site at the artist formerly known as Doyle Park. And so they need new homes. If we offered, one of my thoughts was accelerated charter school site has 127 students. Believe me, we all sit at home thinking of all of this possibilities. One of the possibilities I think that would be a good fit is if, I'm not saying make Santa Rosa 7 through 12, but as the Charter for the Arts numbers have been a little bit soft, and same thing with the arts, ArtQuest. If ArtQuest by itself was just 712, and those kids strengthened ArtQuest by having a 712 ArtQuest only, and then the site that is currently accelerated Charter for the Arts, if you were to create a language academy, French has to stay autonomous because that's how they get their teachers. So you're not making one school, we're not merging. You'd have a language academy that have 2 active hemispheres, 2 magnet schools sharing the same ecosystem, and you make a K4 language school with CCLA and French charter at the Humboldt site because they already have little kid infrastructure there for the little kids. So we don't have to build anything, it's already ready to go. And then you make Santa Rosa Middle, like a 5 through 8 with CCLA and French. And that would be like a true middle school where those 2 schools finally could actually do sports. They've got a track there and they could actually be competing with the other middle schools. It gives, again, increased access, increased opportunity. And French had wanted years back to add a 3rd language for kids that were in their 7th and 8th grade, their older years. So they were trilingual. You could offer the same opportunity for the CCLA kids to be trilingual. And then Santa Rosa Middle School, language academy would filter into Montgomery and continue as they are now with French and IB. And then you could leave Slater, you could leave Rincon Valley. And then that would give both language charters that need new homes a home and be something different and something that would be a draw. And they're centrally located. So you just drive down the 101, it's very accessible if you were coming from Healdsburg or you're coming from out of town to entertain our district as an opportunity. And I'm not offering anything. I just think that I would like to throw one more thing out here. I don't know why we're not talking about maybe one of our schools maybe turning into a year-round 45-15 school, because there is one in Roanoke Park, and I think it would be attractive. You could go see the trees change in October on the East Coast. What? A year-round school somewhere.
It's like, wait. Hold on, I want to, Ross, that was a lot. And I think
That was a lot.
and it was more than this. So what is it that, what needs to get added?
So it would require French charter it would require it would require that the Charter for the Arts site on Humboldt, sorry, I keep saying Humboldt, Fremont's old school. It's on Humboldt Street, right? No? It's on okay. Yeah. Charter for the Arts Artist, formerly known as Fremont Elementary School, would turn into Language Academy site TK through fourth grade for both of those language academies, those schools. And then the middle school would be for their older kids, 5 through 8. So there would be two parts to our ecosystem for a new Santa Rosa City Schools Language Academy. And then you move the 7th and 8th grade charter for the arts students onto Santa Rosa High School's campus for a 7 through 12 art quest. It is a lot.
Okay. He's saying TK through third at the Arts Charter site. 4 through 8 at Santa Rosa Middle School. 5 through 8 at Santa Rosa Middle School. And then no. Because then you're putting 7th and 8th graders at Santa Rosa High.
Yeah,
For an
okay,
art quest thing.
hold on. There's also, again, there's charter law about splitting up a charter school across multiple sites.
Yeah.
That is not a no-no, but there has to be a really good written reason in law. So splitting up a charter school into 3 different sites is probably not gonna fly.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
We loved
I mean,
your
it's
idea.
literally in law with regards to where you place charter schools, so.
Yeah,
splitting
a
them
lot.
up. So,
Okay. I wanted to.
so can we just stick with this first
Yeah.
part then?
So I wanted to address what Ben had said about Ridgeway, and I've been pretty vocal about alternative education on high school sites and how all high schools can envelope that into their site. And I think that if we're really talking about closing schools, I know that you have the little asterisk or the little 1 on the report that says Ridgeway is not open for the discussion of closure. I would say if we're talking about closing high schools, it should be, and those programs can be offered at every high school, so there's no need for Ridgeway as a whole to stay open. If we're just talking about closing schools, it's not that I want Ridgeway to close. I think they do a wonderful service. However, it is $1.9 million. So that should be addressed. Also, I just want to talk about if the district was to look at a TK through 8 at Comstock, there would be no reason for a 7-12 at Pioneer. It could stay 9-12. However, if that is not something that happens at Comstock, then that would be something that would need to happen at Pioneer. And I think that most high schools are really open to making whatever needs to happen work. And so we just want to know if that's the direction we're going. So let's get these ideas to the board so we can figure it out.
All right. So we have right now 5 ideas, though some of them interact. That's the word I'm looking for. Before we start to yes, no, anything else? Yes, Ben.
Yeah, just to make sure we captured on here. So the Monty 7 to 12 was specifically also mentioned to continue the IB program from 7 through 12. So I think that's an aspect of that one. So it's Monty goes to 7 to 12 and IB program is included down to 7. And then one other clarification, Ross had a lot of things to say, but one of the additional clarifications in there on the co-located CCLA and French that I just want to point out that he mentioned, yeah, so an additional clarification that he's saying to have them 2 charters co-located, so they are independent charters on the same site, not that it's one new academy, just as a clarification. Right.
Can I add a little nuance to the I like the idea of a multi-language academy. They would need to be very separate for the little kids, but by the time they get to 7th and 8th, they could absolutely be a little more merged. I mean, by that time, the kids are 50% English, 50% the other world language. They could, like they do at Slater right now, where the French students share the Slater teachers for classes that are in English. There are English-only teachers at CCLA. So there could be, you know, by the time they get to 7th and 8th grade, they absolutely could be sharing teachers. You know, they could all be in the same PE class, for example, right? So it's a little more nuanced than just co-located. I don't know how you're going to capture that. But I do like the idea, but I also do want to point out that there's no way that those two schools are going to fit at Santa Rosa Middle School. It's not going to happen. I was looking at our chart, our little book here, and it's like there's only room for 700 and some kids at Santa Rosa Middle, which is pretty close to the current population at CCLA. So I love the idea. Putting it at Santa Rosa Middle is not really feasible.
I'll think of a better word but so that I remember, I just put cross-teaching in 7th and 8th.
And that's one thing that I think that for the committee, that when thinking about what the board would be doing with the recommendation, is the more general that you can keep, rather than this particular site is where you would co-locate this. That makes it much more difficult than saying, hey, we'd like for these to be co-located if possible. That then leaves, depending on how the rest of it shakes out, it makes it a lot easier for us to run scenarios for them based on, okay, if this is here or there, and provide some options based on the guidance direction from the committee. It's just a little more flexibility with some specificity I know it's finding that balance is helpful.
So are we okay with just striking at Santa Rosa Middle School? Or we could put it in,
I mean, the two
hey,
won't,
we'd like them to be co-located, and if it works at Santa Rosa Middle School.
I think to the point Lisa was making, if we say we're proposing or suggesting something to investigate as a co-location of the language academy, that can be put there without the location because it doesn't fit. It's not feasible. So that's an option. That's not an option as it's written now. So I'd say strike the Santa Rosa Middle with respect to the co-locate aspect. Also, one other comment is it's an interesting scenario, and I think it's useful for us to provide some of this type of brainstorming to the board, but it doesn't help save a high school or the financial problem or any of the other challenges overall that we're looking at. So whereas the ideas on the right side, the 7 through 12s and the potentially Comstock and the Ridgeway, those are going after, I think, what our primary task is. I think these are useful additional commentary, but it's not necessarily going after our primary objective right now.
Since it was your original recommendation.
Since some of my students go to CCLA after Burbank, the original, what I understood was and I would have to ask Aida or somebody that's more in the know on this, but the entire population you see on that spreadsheet that is CCLA, some of those 7th and 8th graders are there because they were granted that as an option besides Comstock as a 7th and 8th grader because it's in their neighborhood. So if they lived in the footprint of Cook and they wanted to stay in their neighborhood and go to CCLA, they were granted entry. They weren't necessarily raised in the ecosystem of dual language program all the way through. So what I'm saying is that it would require a more specific breakdown of both schools. And, in the future coming years, maybe they are a little bit more, tailored down and they're not as they build kids in, it might shrink a little bit CCLA, but it would be a great opportunity. Research shows your language center opens again. It's just like it did when you were a baby 0 to 3. When you hit puberty, it opens up for another 3 years for language acquisition. It'd be great to make them trilingual. And again, it would give a CCLA teacher would be able to offer those services as a crossover for French students, and French teachers would allow a crossover opportunity because they're in the same ecosystem to offer those. I think we need to double check on the numbers of CCLA because some of those kids are going to will be going to the 712 on Elsie's campus. They're not all going over to the Santa Rosa site. So we'd have to do some specific number crunching to see what the full capacity would be. And then they could debate whether they want to go K4 or K5 at the other site, and then 5 through 8 or 6 through 8 at the Santa Rosa site.
That'll be staff's job if that's where the
Yes.
board wants to go. I thought I saw it. Did you? Nope, behind you. No, okay.
Mr. Juarez has asked me in Spanish, to make some level of comparison, like when you look at the different models here, it's difficult to know what financial dollars sign is attached to each particular scenario, how that affects the budget and how the board will respond in turn. ¿Es cierto?
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is, what we're providing the board is here's some other recommendations or here's some other things for the board to consider. And again, with staff, then staff is going to have to sit down and break down for the board. If you do this, it'll save, I'm making up a number, $2. And so that still means you have to close X, Y, or Z to get to that 2 million. So they're going to have to sit there and do that analysis for the board so that the board understands the financial implications and figures out if any of these are viable and which one and how. Okay. Anything else? So. All right. So what we're looking at is LC Allen's. So, not that I want to complicate things. Do we want to, I know when you mentioned it before, you were grouping the LC Allen 712, the Consolidating Ridgeway, and Comstock TK through 8. If I heard you correctly. So was your suggestion that those be bundled, or you were just noting you liked those 3? Just wanted to make sure I understood.
I was just stating I like those ideas
Okay.
and giving the district a variety was what I was going for. But yes, I do
Okay.
like the scenarios.
So right now we're looking at right. Yeah, there's some of these that are is counterfactual and actual work. Yeah, there's some of them that can't happen at the same time. So what we're looking at then though is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potential options for the board to consider as it's looking, or ideas for the board to consider as it's looking at school closures and consolidation. And again, each one of these will still necessitate some type of closures. And working with staff, they can figure out which ones the financials, and using the ones that you ranked for the 311 scenario will also help give them some guidance on what other schools might close to go along with that. That makes sense?
What you were saying, but that is what's in my mind is like, I like these ideas, but should we also give recommendations of what's going to be closing? If we turn LC Allen into a 712 school, I think that's a great idea. Are we closing CCLA? Is that part of that, right? Because if we just say LC Allen's a 712, we're not closing, where's the money being saved, right? It might increase their enrollment, which is awesome. We love increased enrollment, but if it's just increasing enrollment by taking kids from CCLA, that's not helping the bottom line. If we say, okay, Piner's at a 712, we got closed Comstock. That's great. If Comstock's made a TK8, which elementaries are going to close because they're now attending Comstock, right? I think we need to flesh these ideas out because we're nowhere near $11 million with any of them, right? And that, if we're not saving $11 million, then we're not meeting our purpose. And as somebody told me earlier this evening, any money that doesn't come out of school closures is going to come out of people. We're going to lose teachers, and we're going to lose administrators, and we're going to lose support staff. And that is the bottom line, because the money has to be saved.
So my understanding is that all of these ideas that have been put up here are in support of that, kind of in support of that number 4, which indicated that all the high schools would be saved. So would we be able to just say in our report, we are hearing from the community and we all think that saving all the high schools is something that would be good for us to think about how to do. And these are some ideas that we have that could help with that. Is that kind of what we've been doing? Does everyone agree with that? Yes?
I 50% agree. Okay, I 50% agree, and this is why. Yes, and not all high schools can go 7-12. Right? And so,
No, she pushed the button.
it's fine. Oh, there we go. I think that, can we do that? Can we say, yes, we like it for some, but not all? We want to save all the high schools, but we don't want all the high schools to go 7-12. And I'm not talking about Pioneer, but you cannot go 7-12 at Carrillo. They have 1,600 students. Ring Valley has 800 students. Where are you going to put all those kids? That would be 2,200 kids on that site. That it can, you'd have to bring in a ton of portables, and it would be very uncomfortable, different environment with 2,200 kids than it is with 1,500 or 1,600.
I agree. Yeah. So I think maybe if we could revise number 4 to say our intent is to try to save all the high schools. And these are the ideas that these are the ideas that we've thrown up there for you to investigate to try to do that.
Well, that's one of the,
So I think where it's coming around is we've got the prioritization for option 1 of the 311, and what we're circling around here for the alternative scenario is that the committee is recommending, if possible, to save all high schools, but to do so, we do not recommend putting 7-12 on all high school campuses. We do recommend looking into some of these other options here in order to get to that. Does that sum it up for that scenario?
and then the board, again, with staff's help, is going to have to figure out then which middle schools and elementary schools are going to have to close to make that work if they decide they want to go through that 7-12 option.
So are we including Ridgeway as a high school, or Ridgeway, the consideration to go into the other high schools?
So I personally would have ranked Ridgeway #1 and tied the other 2 schools at the #2 slot, but because it's not a comprehensive high school, it doesn't solve the task of what we're asked to do. So that's why the other 2 are sharing that other spot. I just feel like all the scenarios require taking that $2 million and adding it to the puzzle. Otherwise, a lot of these other very creative solutions I've got so many different ways to make the math. It doesn't work without Ridgeway. So we do need to include closing or putting Ridgeway either onto this campus, which it already practically lives here, or finding where those kids go and slowly dispersing it onto their other high schools as a small, unique offering.
So when you guys say save all the high schools, it really is save all 5 comprehensive high schools.
Thank
Because
you.
I think
That's
that,
what I
yeah,
wanted to
it's like, I think that is a It's just a really fine detail that kind of, yeah, that kind of gets, so it's comprehensive high schools. And I think that that was your question. I would like to say, it's like, I hear you.
So one thing that I want to say about Ridgeway is it may make sense to move it, to disperse it. It may also cost more to do so. So it's something we will absolutely run numbers on. But when you're having, if it's set up, say the way that Grace is, there are larger other classes to make sure that those classes are small. That doesn't always, it's not always acceptable on the school site to do that. And so I think that Pioneer has created a really unique culture that allows that. It just may be challenging. So from a budgetary perspective, that may or may not work, but it's certainly something that we can include in the factors.
Okay. So we're saving all, the goal is to save all comprehensive high schools. And here are some ideas and some scenarios that might assist with that. And so then we'll just list these other options for the board to consider. And again, they will then, with staff's help, assuming they want to pursue one of them, figure out, well, that means this elementary school is closing, those two middle schools are closing, whatever that scenario is, to get to the number and to right size the district. We got that? So can I get a thumbs up? That might be one of the first like unanimous. I think we had, well, no, I can live with it, but I can live with that. I can live with that.
Way back.
I worry about our middle schoolers, so I'm not going to give it an up, but I'll give it a sideways.
I'll take it. I can live with it. I wouldn't go there. All right, so trying to think of the best way. So we want to, and it'll be not easy, to put in a comprehensive recommendation and have you guys actually vote for a comprehensive recommendation. And so I was trying to like figure out, so it's the recommending to the board to consider recommend to the board that you are providing the following sites for closure, which would then put us at the elementary level, we have 2 tiers, Steel Lane, Albert Biela, Brook Hill. Tier number 2, Monroe, CCLA, Lincoln, and Hidden Valley. For the middle schools, they actually are ranked. Santa Rosa Middle School first, Herbert Slater second, Hilliard Comstock third, and Rincon Valley fourth. And then for the high schools, again, we're at 3 tiers with Montgomery and Elsie Allen, noting the refusal to pit them once against each other and the equity language. Santa Rosa Middle School in the middle tier, and then Pioneer High School and Maria Carrillo in the bottom tier. And then as an alternative recommendation for the board to consider would be the saving of all comprehensive high schools. And in service of potentially saving those high schools, here are, what did I add? 6 options for the board to consider when they're doing that. Did I get all of the pieces?
Two additions I think that were missed in there, and they're the caveats of the linkages between the elementaries that we discussed. So making sure those are
have that
part of it.
written
I know
down.
we captured them, but that's part of it. And then the other caveat with the alternative scenarios was that, yes, save all comprehensive high schools, but don't implement 7 to 12 on all campuses. So we're suggesting these things, but maybe we need to clearly say we're not recommending implementing that across the board on all campuses.
Okay. All right.
Otherwise, yes.
So I see one Mike and then Aaron.
Did we have some other options? I know you flipped the page, but I don't remember anymore.
These were the ones that came that were presented at the town hall meeting.
Okay, okay.
So it was the TK through 8, the 6 through 8, or TK through 3/4 through 8.
Okay, well, I'll stick with the other 2 pages.
Okay.
You can flip that back.
Flip it back. Aaron, I think you had your hand up.
I just would like to request that we add something into our report about concerns over transferring the IB program should Montgomery close so that they can get some more information on what that procedure would be.
Okay.
And if we can have that, whatever they end up doing, again, a focus for attract and retain. We want to attract, okay, we want more students to come here. So whatever they do, how do they keep us attractive? Because this is our opportunity to change and be something new for our customers. How do we attract? And then how do we keep folks here? So whatever they do, looking to minimize flight. It's going to be tough to do that completely. But again, how do we get creative and retain, attract folks either from the charters that may be changing their situations or students that are from out of the area?
I would also like to add, no matter what the outcomes are, that we really, to second what Ross said, is we really want to highlight the programming we have in this district. We have great art programs, the CTE program. We should also think about having a lesser credit diploma that can work for students that cannot do the 220 credit. So there's some other options we really need to look at to make this district attractive for students to say, I want to go there because they have a lesser diploma and I can get out in lesser time. So it's really looking at some programming that's going to, you know, be welcoming to students and say, I see myself in that district.
While Yvette was talking, I remind, every board meeting, I always listen to the board meetings, and Catherine does a wonderful job of giving her SRTA summary of what's happening and her report to the board. And she always says, we want to attract and retain teachers in Santa Rosa. I think what Yvette's saying right now is we want to also attract and retain our families and our students, and we have to do some really hard work to get that done. So it's with that hope.
I don't totally know if this fits into this conversation, but I would be remiss if I just didn't say it. If the board makes the decision to close a high school, I don't know if this goes in the report. I don't know if I just need to say it right now loud for people to hear. I think we really need to prioritize any displaced high school students and providing them. And I know people are already working on it and talking about it and the planning. So it's not a new idea, but I'm just going to say it to help our students transition, to keep them on track towards their post-secondary goals, to keep them on track to graduation, to make sure they're meeting those coaches if they played at their old school, that they're, where's the best high school if I want to continue playing in, my instrument, all of that, like one-on-one, like dedicated counseling support so that they stay on track and feel supported. And they're not just left on their own to kind of navigate that.
So, and just to be clear, a lot of these comments, et cetera, we'll put in the report of here's the comments from the committee, et cetera. The actual recommendation is close these schools, keep these open, here's some alternatives to consider. That's what the recommendation itself will be. All right. And so with that, if any other comments before? All right. So we actually need a motion and a second, and we are going to vote so that we have a, I say it's going to be unanimous because I'm going to be an optimist. With regards to that motion and that recommendation. Yeah, I'm good.
I motion for the scenario we just went over with the board and all the recommendations.
What, you don't want to repeat the
Oh
whole
my
thing?
God, please don't. So I motion.
Thank you. I got a second? Great. So all those in favor, raise your hand so we can count. Okay, I think I can. All right, so yeah, so it actually is unanimous. See, a girl can dream and it comes true sometimes. It just takes 8 meetings or so. All right. So thank you. So I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask. I got to ask. So the only other item that we have to do as a committee is review and provide any comments, feedback on the report, and provide us with the authority to finalize the report. So do you want to tackle that this evening, or do you guys want to come back next Monday? All right, give me a show of hands for next Monday. Oh, I mean, so we provided a draft of the report with the happenings for this evening in yellow with how we thought it might go, and obviously it did not go that way, which is fine. And the thought is to go through the report. If anybody had any comments, any edits for what was there, we want to make those notes so that we can update the report. And you'd be then giving us the authority to summarize what happened this evening, write it all up, and effectively finalize the report so that it can go to the board. And at the February 5th meeting, a presentation will be made by your chair and vice chair and anybody else who wants to come along and be there on the report, and then the board will have that report as well. And so we can walk through that tonight. If anybody had comments, edits, etc. Or we can, if everybody's like, no, I'm completely burned out, we can reconvene next Monday on our alternate date. And to also give you an opportunity to read through it if you haven't, etc., and do that then. So I hear whisperings, but nothing that I can understand.
I think that maybe in fairness, not that I don't want to divorce everybody soon, I mean, but I'd love to see you guys next week. No,
You're going to miss them so much.
I'm still, yeah. I think that it would be better if we let this bake and sit, because right now, if we're going to catch any mistakes, like you edit, you walk away for a day or so, and then you come back and you look at it. Maybe that's the best for the process, for what we're going to submit. And if anybody has that realization in the next few days, it's set to go. But can we agree that if we do it, it's like hour and a half or hour and not 5 hours?
Generally, am I getting mostly head shakes? Yes. Want to wait until yes.
Maybe just a clarification. So if we wait till next week, all of this new information would also be included in
So
that
yeah,
draft. that
we'll
be able to do,
incorporate
yeah.
all of this, and it'll get posted on Friday with the agenda, and so you'd have.
And then one other clarification, does that cause any problems for the board meeting on Wednesday in that timing?
It is a special meeting, so technically we don't have to post the agenda until the day before. We want to get the information posted as soon as possible. And the board was fine with receiving draft information, so it may be that we post the draft and the agenda early, and then you guys have your action on Monday, and then we revise the attachment with the final report.
And the draft will include all of the stuff that was just,
Yeah, so everything that if you looked
Added
at it,
today.
everything that was in
Great.
yellow for tonight is all gonna get.
thank you.
Yeah. All right, so it sounds like we'll be back next Monday, those of us who can, at 5:30. The location,
The location will be determined because this is problematic for Santa Rosa High, for the ArtQuest students. So I don't know what we expect our attendance to be, whether we should hold it at Stony Point or a site. We'll figure that out and make the announcement.
And if you cannot make it and have some feedback, if you'll just email it to Lisa, and we can make sure it's no later than Friday at noon, so that it can get incorporated with the draft that'll get posted on Friday afternoon. Okay? All right.
Okay, with that, we will, sorry, sorry, yeah, just a reminder for the committee members to look at the agenda. There are quite a few correspondence that are attached to the last item in there, feedback from folks, and we will have additional correspondence, I'm sure, coming in there as well. So please try and keep up on those. And with that, we will adjourn for the evening. Thank you.